One bullet, one choice, and the woman caught between two worlds is bleeding. Celine Vale never imagined she would hold a trembling gun in her hand, aiming it at the head of the man holding her brother hostage. Behind her, Ronan Drakov, the city's most dangerous crime boss, knelt, ready to die for her. Rain poured through shattered windows. Gunshots rang out, and everything changed forever. This is the story of how an ordinary woman is drawn into hell and falls in love with the devil who rules it. Watch to the end, and comment the city you're watching in, so I know how far this story has come. The rain came down like bullets against the pavement, each drop exploding on impact, turning the streets of Blackwater City into rivers of neon-streaked filth. Celine Vale stood under the broken awning of a 24-hour liquor store, her thin jacket soaked through, her hands shaking from something that wasn't quite the cold. Inside her pocket, her phone buzzed for the 17th time that hour. Collection agencies, hospital billing departments, loan sharks with friendly voices that promised broken bones if she missed another payment. She didn't look at it. Instead, she pulled the bottle of cheap vodka from the paper bag and unscrewed the cap with fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else. The first swallow burned down her throat, harsh and mean, exactly what she needed. She hadn't had a drink in 3 years, not since the night her mother died and left her with a 14-year-old brother and a mortgage on a 2-bedroom apartment that smelled like mildew and broken promises. But tonight, Danny was in the ICU again. His transplanted heart was failing. Again. And the doctors, with their pressed white coats and sympathetic eyes, had told her that without another surgery, one that cost more than she'd make in 5 lifetimes, he had maybe 3 months. So yeah, tonight she was drinking. Fuck it, she muttered to no one, to the rain, to whatever God had decided her life should be a slow-motion car crash. She took another pull from the bottle and started walking. Blackwater City at night was a beast that fed on desperation. The downtown district glittered with wealth. High-rises made of steel and glass, luxury cars purring through streets lined with designer boutiques, and restaurants where a single meal cost more than her weekly grocery budget. But venture 3 blocks east, past the invisible line that separated the haves from the never-will-haves, and you found the truth of it. Pawn shops with barred windows, methadone clinics, apartments with locks that didn't work, and landlords who didn't care. Celine existed in the space between those worlds. She worked 3 jobs. Mornings at the diner on 5th, afternoons cleaning offices in the financial district, nights waiting tables at an upscale bar where men in $1,000 suits left her $20 tips and looked through her like she was furniture. She slept 4 hours a night if she was lucky. She ate ramen and day-old bread from the discount bin. And still, every month, she sank deeper into a hole she couldn't climb out of. The hospital bills alone would have buried her. But Danny's rejection medications cost $3,000 a month. The rent was 2 months overdue. And yesterday, a man named Vitali with gold teeth and dead eyes had knocked on her door and reminded her that the $15,000 she'd borrowed from his business associates was now $25,000 with interest, and they'd be collecting one way or another. She'd slammed the door in his face and immediately regretted it. Hence, vodka. Hence, walking through downtown at midnight with no destination in mind except away. Club Nocturne materialized out of the rain like something from a fever dream. She'd walked past it 100 times during her morning commute. A converted warehouse with no sign, just a red door and a line of beautiful people waiting behind velvet ropes, overseen by security guards the size of refrigerators. It was the kind of place she'd never get into, not in 1,000 years, not with her discount store jeans and secondhand coat. But tonight, she was drunk enough to try. The bouncer looked her up and down with the expression of someone examining a piece of gum stuck to their shoe. Private club. I can see that. The words came out sharper than she intended. Drunk Celine apparently had less patience for bullshit than sober Celine. Members only. Great. Sign me up. He didn't smile. Invitation required. Annual fee starts at $50,000. Celine laughed, a harsh, brittle sound that surprised even her. 50,000. Jesus Christ. She took another swig from the bottle, ignoring the way his jaw tightened. You know what I could do with $50,000? I could save my brother's life. But sure, let's spend it on the privilege of drinking overpriced vodka with assholes in designer suits. She turned to leave, but the door opened behind her and a woman emerged. Impossibly tall, impossibly beautiful, wrapped in a white fur coat that probably cost more than Celine's car. The The woman glanced at her with the kind of bored curiosity reserved for street performers and homeless people, then swept past into a waiting town car. In that moment, the door hung open. Celine didn't think, she just moved. She slipped past the bouncer while he was distracted by the departing guest, pushed through the red door, and found herself in a cathedral of excess. The club interior was all black marble and gold accents, crystal chandeliers dripping light like frozen waterfalls. Music pulsed through the floor, something dark and electronic that felt less like a song and more like a heartbeat. Beautiful people danced in the shadows, their faces half hidden, their movements hypnotic. The air smelled like expensive perfume and money. Celine stood there, dripping rainwater onto marble that probably cost more per square foot than her entire apartment, and realized she'd made a terrible mistake. But the vodka in her blood said, "Fuck it, you're already here." She wove through the crowd, ignored by the glittering people who belonged in this world, clutching her bottle like a talisman. She found the bar, a massive slab of polished obsidian that stretched the length of the room, and ordered a drink she couldn't afford with a credit card that was definitely maxed out. The bartender, a woman with a severe black bob and the kind of bone structure that suggested supernatural intervention, raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "You lost?" "Probably. This isn't that kind of club." "What kind is it?" The bartender's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "The kind where people like you don't accidentally wander in." Before Celine could respond, someone jostled her from behind, a man in a navy suit who reeked of cigar smoke and cologne. Her vodka bottle slipped from her grip, hit the floor, and shattered, spraying glass and alcohol across pristine marble. The music didn't stop, but something in the atmosphere shifted. Conversations died, people turned to look. "Shit!" Celine crouched down, trying to gather the larger pieces of glass with her bare hands. "Shit, I'm sorry, I'll clean it up." "Ma'am?" A security guard appeared beside her, his hand closing around her upper arm with the kind of pressure that made it clear this wasn't a request. "You need to leave." "I know, I'm sorry, I just—" "Now." He hauled her to her feet and started steering her toward the exit. Celine didn't resist. This night was already a disaster. Getting arrested for trespassing would just be the perfect cherry on top of the shit Sunday that was her life. But drunk Celine, apparently, had other ideas. "You know what?" She yanked her arm free, stumbling slightly. "You're right. I don't belong here. None of us do. This whole place—" She gestured wildly at the club, the beautiful people, the obscene wealth on display. "It's fucking grotesque. You're all playing dress-up while people are dying in the streets, and you don't even see it. You don't even care." The guard reached for her again, but Celine was already moving, drunk and furious and reckless in a way she'd never allowed herself to be. She shoved through a side door looking for an exit and found herself in a corridor lined with more black marble and dim golden light. She kept walking. The corridor ended in a set of double doors, heavy wood bound with brass. No signs, no indication of what lay beyond. Celine pushed them open. The room beyond was silence itself. It was smaller than the main club, intimate in a way that felt deliberate. Dark leather couches arranged in a semicircle, low lighting that turned everything into shadow and amber, and men, 5 of them, who turned to look at her with the kind of stillness that made her lizard brain scream danger. They were armed. She saw it immediately, the bulges under tailored suit jackets, the way they moved with predatory efficiency as they rose to their feet. These weren't bouncers or private security. These were something else, something worse. And sitting in the center of the semicircle, in a leather chair that might as well have been a throne, was a man who made the world shrink down to just him. Ronan Drakov. She knew him the way you know a shark when you're bleeding in the water. She'd never seen him before, but his face was legend in Blackwater City. Grainy photos and newspaper articles about unsolved murders, whispered stories in dive bars about the man who'd risen from nothing to rule the city's underworld with methodical brutality. He was maybe 35, maybe ageless, with dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from stone by an artist who understood violence. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her car. And his eyes, Jesus, his eyes were the coldest thing she'd ever seen. They fixed on her with the intensity of a predator calculating the best way to break its prey's neck. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Celine's mouth had gone dry, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Every survival instinct she possessed was screaming at her to run, to apologize, to do whatever it took to get out of this room alive. Instead, she heard herself say, "Oh, private party. My bad." Still, no one moved. She should have been terrified, and she was, distantly, under the vodka and adrenaline. But the alcohol had burned away the part of her brain that knew how to be appropriately afraid. All she felt was a kind of distant curiosity about whether this was how she'd die, drunk and stupid in a room full of killers. "You lost?" Ronan's voice was quiet, almost conversational, which somehow made it worse. "Apparently." Celine's laugh came out strangled. "This night just keeps getting better." One of the armed men started toward her, but Ronan raised one hand, barely a movement at all, and the man froze. "You know who I am?" Ronan asked. Celine's brain struggled through the vodka fog. Some billionaire with a villain complex? Someone inhaled sharply. The man nearest to her actually put his hand on his gun. But Ronan didn't move. He just watched her with those dead, cold eyes. And Celine realized, with a clarity that cut through the alcohol like a knife, that she'd just mocked the most dangerous man in Blackwater City to his face. "I'm dead," she said flatly. "Right? That's what happens now." Ronan stood. He moved like water, like something that had never been clumsy or uncertain in its entire life. He crossed the space between them slowly, each step deliberate, until he was close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that probably had a name she couldn't pronounce. He was taller than her by half a foot, broad-shouldered and solid in a way that made her feel suddenly acutely aware of how small she was, how breakable. "You should be terrified," he said softly, his eyes never leaving hers. "You should be on your knees, begging for your life." "Yeah, well," Celine's voice shook, but she held his gaze. "I'm drunk and my life is already a fucking nightmare, so honestly, do whatever you're going to do. I'm too tired to care." Something flickered in those cold eyes. Not warmth, nothing as human as warmth, but something. Interest, maybe, or curiosity about this stupid, broken woman who'd wandered into his private room and refused to grovel. He reached out and gripped her chin, tilting her face up to his. His fingers were warm against her skin, but his touch was gentle, in a way that felt more threatening than violence. "What's your name?" he asked. "Celine." It came out as a whisper. "Celine." He repeated it like he was tasting it, deciding whether it was worth remembering. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, a touch so light it might have been accidental. "You have no idea how close you just came to dying." "Story of my life." His mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close. And then he leaned in, so close that his lips nearly brushed against hers, close enough that she could feel the heat of him. "You should be terrified of me, little storm." And he let her go. Celine stumbled back, her heart in her throat, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. The armed men were still frozen in place, watching their boss with expressions that suggested this deviation from protocol was deeply troubling. "Get her out of here," Ronan said without looking away from Celine. "Make sure she gets home safe." "Boss?" one of the men started. "Now." The man who'd been about to shoot her now put a hand on her elbow, gently, carefully, like she was made of glass. He guided her out of the room, down the corridor, through the club where the music still pulsed and the beautiful people still danced, oblivious to the fact that she'd just walked into the mouth of hell and somehow walked back out. The night air hit her face like a slap. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and gleaming under the streetlights. A black SUV idled at the curb, and the man who'd escorted her opened the back door. "Get in," he said. Not unkindly. Celine got in. The ride home passed in a blur. She gave the driver her address in a voice that didn't sound like her own, and watched the city slide past the tinted windows. The SUV was obscenely nice, leather seats that probably cost more than her monthly rent, climate control that made her realize just how cold and wet she'd been. They dropped her off outside her apartment building, a 5-story walk-up with a broken front door and graffiti on the walls. The driver didn't comment on the neighborhood, just waited until she was inside before pulling away. Celine climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment on legs that felt like rubber. Her hands shook so badly that it took 3 tries to get the key in the lock. Inside, the apartment was exactly as she'd left it, cramped and cluttered, smelling like the Chinese takeout she'd eaten 3 days ago because she couldn't afford anything else. Danny's room was empty, his things exactly where he'd left them before his latest hospital admission. She made it to the bathroom before she threw up. Afterward, she sat on the cold tile floor, her back against the tub, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. She'd walked into Ronan Dracov's private meeting. She'd insulted him. She'd survived. And the way he'd looked at her, the way he'd touched her face, the words he'd whispered, "You should be terrified of me." She was. God, she was. But not for the reasons he probably thought. Celine eventually dragged herself to bed, but didn't sleep. She lay in the dark, listening to her neighbor's television through the thin walls, and tried to convince herself that tomorrow she'd wake up and everything would go back to normal. She'd go back to being invisible. She'd go back to drowning slowly. She'd never see Ronan Dracov again. That's what she told herself. She almost believed it. Morning came too soon and too bright. Celine's head throbbed with the kind of hangover that felt personal, like her brain was punishing her for every bad decision she'd ever made. She rolled out of bed, showered in water that never got hot enough, and dressed in her diner uniform, a polyester nightmare in teal and white that made her look washed out and tired. Which, to be fair, she was. The diner was 20 minutes away by bus, and she made it with 3 minutes to spare. Lou's place had been serving mediocre breakfast to downtown workers for 40 years, and it looked every day of it. Cracked vinyl booths, a perpetually broken jukebox, and a smell that was equal parts coffee and industrial cleaner. "You look like hell," Marcus said as she tied on her apron. He was the morning cook, 60 years old with a beer gut and a heart of gold. Feel like it, too. Big night? Something like that. She fell into the rhythm of the morning rush, coffee refills, taking orders, delivering plates of eggs and bacon and pancakes to people who wouldn't remember her face 5 minutes after they left. It was mindless work, which was good because her mind was elsewhere. She kept replaying the moment in that room. The way Ronan had looked at her. The way his fingers had felt against her skin. "You should be terrified of me." She was clearing table 6 when the front door opened and a man in a dark suit walked in. He was young, maybe 30, with the kind of face that would have been handsome if it wasn't quite so cold. He looked around the diner with the expression of someone who'd never been inside a place like this and found it personally offensive. He walked directly to Celine. "Celine Vale?" Her blood went cold. "Who's asking?" "Mr. Dracov would like to see you." Every head in the diner turned. Celine could feel the weight of their stares, curiosity, concern, the kind of recognition that came from living in a city where everyone knew Drakov's name, even if they didn't know his face. "I'm working." "Not anymore." The man pulled out his phone, tapped something, and showed her the screen. It was a payment confirmation, 3 months of her wages deposited into her account. "Your boss has been compensated." Lou, who'd been watching from behind the counter, looked like he was trying to decide whether to call the police or just stay the hell out of it. Smart money was on the latter. "You're serious?" "Mr. Dracov doesn't waste time with jokes." Celine untied her apron with hands that wanted to shake. She was acutely aware of everyone watching, Marcus in the kitchen, Lou behind the counter, the regulars who came in every morning and knew her by name. What did they think was happening? That she was being arrested? Kidnapped? Recruited? She followed the man outside where 2 black SUVs idled at the curb. He opened the back door of the first one. "Get in." "What if I say no?" "You won't." He was right. Because if Ronan Dracov wanted to see her badly enough to pull her out of work in broad daylight, saying no wasn't an option. You didn't say no to a man like him. You just hoped you survived whatever came next. The ride took 15 minutes. Heading deeper into the financial district where the buildings were made of glass and steel and seemed to touch the sky. They pulled into the underground garage of a high-rise that Celine recognized. Dracov Tower, a 40-story monument to wealth and power, all sharp angles and cold elegance. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent. The man in the suit stood beside her, not quite touching her, but close enough that she felt caged. The elevator doors were mirrors, and Celine caught sight of herself, pale, exhausted, wearing a diner uniform that smelled like coffee and grease. She looked like exactly what she was, someone who didn't belong. The penthouse was a study in controlled excess. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, white marble floors, Furniture that looked like it had been designed by someone who believed comfort was for the weak. And standing by those windows, looking out over Blackwater City like he owned every inch of it, was Ronan Drakov. He turned as she entered. In daylight, he was somehow worse, sharper, colder, more real. He'd traded the black suit for charcoal gray, but the effect was the same, power contained in expensive fabric. "Thank you, Marcus," he said to the man who'd brought her. "That will be all." The man, Marcus apparently, left without a word, and Celine was alone with the most dangerous man in the city. "Why am I here?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Ronan gestured to a chair, white leather, probably cost more than her car. "Sit." "I'll stand." "Suit yourself." He crossed the room to a bar that looked like it belonged in a museum, poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, brought one to her. "Whiskey, 60 years old, probably the most expensive thing you'll ever drink." She took it because refusing felt more dangerous than accepting. The whiskey burned, smooth and harsh at once, tasting like wood smoke and money. "You sobered up since last night?" Ronan asked. "Unfortunately." He smiled, barely. "Regret what you said to me?" "Should I?" Most people would be begging for their lives right now. "I spent 3 hours this morning serving eggs to assholes who don't tip. My capacity for fear is pretty depleted." He watched her over the rim of his glass, and Celine had the uncomfortable sensation of being studied, dissected, evaluated for some purpose she didn't understand. "Tell me about your brother," he said. The air left her lungs. "How, Daniel Vale, 14 years old, heart transplant recipient, currently in the ICU at Mercy General with acute rejection. Prognosis, poor." Ronan set down his glass. "You work 3 jobs to cover his medical expenses. You're drowning in debt. You borrowed $15,000 from Vitaly Kozlov's operation 6 months ago, which is now $25,000 with interest. You're 2 months behind on rent. Your landlord is filing eviction papers next week." Celine felt sick. Not from the whiskey, from the realization that this man knew everything about her. Every desperate decision, every unpaid bill, every failure. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand something." Ronan moved closer, slow and deliberate. "I know you, Celine Vale. I know you're drowning. I know you're desperate. And I know exactly what it would take to save you. I don't want your money. I haven't offered any." He was close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his dark eyes. "What I'm offering is a choice." "What choice?" "Your brother has been transferred to Harrington Medical Center. Best cardiac facility in the country. Private suite. Round-the-clock specialized care. All expenses paid." Celine's heart stopped. "What?" "It's already done. He was transferred 2 hours ago." "You—" She couldn't breathe. "You can't just—" "I can do whatever I want, Celine. That's what you don't understand." His voice was soft, almost gentle, which made it infinitely worse. "Your brother will receive the best care available. He'll get the surgery he needs. He'll live." "Why?" The word came out broken. "Because you interested me last night. Because you walked into my meeting and called me a billionaire with a villain complex, and you should have died for that, but I found myself curious about the woman stupid enough to do it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. Sleek, black, expensive. "There's one contact saved in here. Mine. When I call, you answer. When I tell you to come, you come. When I tell you to do something, you do it." He held out the phone. Celine stared at it like it was a bomb. "You want me to be your— what? Your whore?" "If I wanted that, I'd have taken it last night." His expression didn't change. "What I want is more complicated and more permanent." "I don't understand." "You don't need to. You just need to decide. Do you want your brother to live?" The penthouse felt like it was closing in. Outside the windows, Blackwater City sprawled in the sunlight, indifferent to the deal being made in this room. People were going about their lives, working, eating, loving, while Celine stood on the edge of a cliff and realized she'd already fallen off. Because there was no choice. There never had been. She took the phone. Ronan's fingers brushed against hers, deliberate, possessive. "Smart girl." "I hate you," she whispered. "Not yet." He stepped back, already dismissing her. "Marcus will take you to see your brother. Then he'll take you home. Tomorrow, you'll quit your other 2 jobs. I'll have money deposited in your account to cover your expenses. I don't want... You don't have a choice anymore, Celine. He turned back to the windows to his view of the city. You stopped having choices the moment you walked into that room last night. You just didn't know it yet. So what? I'm your prisoner now? You're mine, he said simply. However I choose to define that. Marcus appeared in the doorway as if summoned. Celine wanted to throw the phone at Ronan's head, wanted to scream that she wasn't property, that he couldn't just buy her life. But Danny's face flashed in her mind. Her baby brother, 14 and terrified in that hospital bed, his new heart failing. She turned and followed Marcus to the elevator. Oh God. Harrington Medical Center was the kind of place where you forgot people were dying. Everything was pristine white and brushed steel, soft lighting, and quiet efficiency. They gave her a visitor's badge and directed her to the cardiac wing, where private suites overlooked a garden that probably employed a full-time staff. Danny was in room 412. He looked smaller in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors that beeped steadily. Bruises dotted his arms from IVs and blood draws, but his eyes, when they opened and saw her, were brighter than they'd been in weeks. Lena? He still called her that, the nickname from when he was 5 and couldn't pronounce Celine. Hey, buddy. She pulled a chair close, took his hand. How you feeling? Better than Mercy. He gestured weakly at the room. This place is insane. They've got, actual food, and the nurses don't look like they want to murder everyone. Celine's throat tightened. Yeah? Yeah. He paused. Lena, what did you do? What do you mean? Come on, I'm not stupid. We can't afford this place. Last week you were crying over the Mercy bills, and now I'm in, the Four Seasons of hospitals? His eyes, so much older than 14, fixed on her. What did you do? She should have known better than to underestimate him. Danny had been forced to grow up fast after their mother died. He understood exactly how much they were drowning, even when she tried to hide it from him. I got help, she said carefully. From who? Someone who owed me a favor. Bullshit. His monitor beeped faster, agitated. Lena, what's going on? A nurse appeared in the doorway, young, competent looking. Everything okay in here? Fine, Celine said quickly. Just emotional. The nurse gave Danny a dose of something that made his eyelids droop. Within minutes, he was asleep, his breathing evening out. Celine sat there for another hour, holding her brother's hand, and tried not to think about what she'd agreed to. Tried not to think about the phone in her pocket, heavy as a bomb. Tried not to think about Ronan Drakov's words. You're mine, however I choose to define that. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended unreality. True to his word, money appeared in her account, enough to cover her rent, her bills, groceries, everything. She quit her afternoon cleaning job and her evening waitressing gig. Lou accepted her resignation at the diner with a knowing look that suggested he'd already heard rumors about black SUVs and men in suits. The phone didn't ring. Celine told herself she should be relieved. Instead, she felt like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped on the 4th day. The phone buzzed at 7 p.m., a single message from a number that wasn't saved. Car downstairs, 8 p.m., dress appropriately. Celine stared at it for a full minute before moving. Then she ransacked her closet, which was a generous word for the collection of secondhand clothes and worn-out basics, looking for anything that qualified as appropriate for whatever Ronan had planned. She settled on a black dress she'd bought for her mother's funeral. It was simple, not particularly flattering, and it smelled faintly of mothballs. She showered, did her makeup as best she could with drugstore products, and braided her hair. At 8 p.m. exactly, she went downstairs. The black SUV was waiting. This time, Marcus wasn't inside. The driver was someone new, older, with a scar across his left cheek and the kind of stillness that suggested military training. He didn't introduce himself, just pulled away from the curb the moment she was buckled in. They drove to a part of the city Celine had only seen from a distance, where old money lived in historic mansions behind iron gates, where the streets were lined with trees and the sidewalks were actually maintained. The SUV pulled up to a building that looked like it had been transplanted from Paris. Elegant stone facade, tall windows, a discreet gold plaque that read La Maison. What is this? Celine asked. Go inside, the driver said. They're expecting you. The interior was all cream and gold, with a subtle fragrance that probably cost more than her car. A woman materialized from somewhere, ageless, beautiful, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. "Miss Vale," she smiled with professional warmth. "Mr. Drakov has arranged an appointment for you. Follow me, please." For the next 3 hours, Celine was prodded, measured, styled, and transformed. They washed her hair with products that smelled like flowers and summer. They shaped her nails. They showed her dresses, rack after rack of silk and satin and fabrics she couldn't name, in colors that seemed to glow in the soft lighting. "Mr. Drakov specified black or dark jewel tones," the stylist said, pulling out a dress that made Celine's breath catch. It was emerald green silk, cut to skim her body in ways that were elegant rather than revealing, with a neckline that showed just enough skin to be interesting. She tried it on because refusing seemed pointless. The woman in the mirror was a stranger. The dress transformed her, made her look sleek, expensive, dangerous. They'd done something to her hair that made it fall in dark waves. Her makeup was subtle, but somehow made her eyes look larger, her lips fuller. "Perfect," the stylist said with satisfaction. "I can't afford this," Celine said. "It's already paid for, along with these." She gestured to several other garments, more dresses, a coat that looked like liquid midnight, shoes that were definitely designer. Celine was given a garment bag with everything inside and sent back to the waiting SUV. They drove for 20 minutes, heading back downtown until they pulled up to a restaurant that had a 3-month waiting list and a menu with no prices. The driver opened her door. "He's inside." "Of course he is," Celine muttered. The restaurant was hushed and expensive, white tablecloths, crystal glasses catching candlelight, quiet conversations that sounded like money being exchanged. Ronan sat at a table in the back corner, positioned so he could see every entrance. He wore another dark suit, this one midnight blue, and he looked up as she approached. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Sit." Celine sat. A waiter appeared instantly, poured water into her glass, disappeared again. "The dress suits you," Ronan said. "I feel like a doll you've dressed up." "Is that what you think this is?" "Isn't it?" She met his gaze. "You're parading me around in expensive clothes to, what, show ownership?" "If I wanted to show ownership, I'd have done it differently." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "This is about teaching you how to exist in my world." "I didn't ask to exist in your world." "No. You asked me to save your brother's life." His voice was quiet, but there was steel underneath. "This is the price. Being your dress-up doll? Being someone who can sit across from me at places like this without looking terrified." He paused. "You're doing better than I expected, actually. Most people can't hold eye contact with me for more than a few seconds. Maybe I'm too stupid to be properly scared. Or maybe you're braver than you think." The waiter returned and Ronan ordered for both of them, in French of course, without asking what she wanted. The food, when it came, was the kind of beautiful that seemed wrong to eat. Celine picked at it, hyper-aware of Ronan watching her every movement. "Why me?" she asked finally. "There are thousands of women in this city who'd kill to be sitting here." "Exactly. They'd kill for it. They'd perform for it. They'd be whoever they thought I wanted them to be." He took a sip of wine. "You walked into that room 3 nights ago and called me a billionaire with a villain complex. You were drunk and desperate, and you didn't give a damn about impressing me. So you liked that I insulted you?" "I liked that you were real." His eyes fixed on hers. "Everyone around me is a liar, Celine. Everyone wants something. Everyone's performing. You weren't. I was just drunk." "You were honest." He set down his glass. "That's rare and valuable. So what, you're collecting me like some kind of exotic pet?" "I'm keeping you close because the alternative is watching you drown." His voice dropped lower. "You think I don't see it? How tired you are. How close you were to breaking." He leaned forward. "I could have let you walk away that night. I could have let Vitali's people collect on your debt. I could have let your brother die in that shitty hospital. Instead, I chose to intervene. And now you're mine." "People aren't property. In my world, they are." He said it simply, like stating a fact about the weather. "Everyone belongs to someone. Better to belong to me than to the vultures circling your corpse." Celine's appetite died completely. She pushed her plate away. And what exactly does belonging to you mean? It means when I call, you answer. When I tell you to be somewhere, you're there. When I introduce you to people, you stand beside me and you smile and you let them think whatever I want them to think. You want a trophy. I want someone real. He reached across the table and caught her wrist. Not hard, but firm enough that she couldn't pull away. You'll learn how this works, Celine. You'll learn how to dress, how to talk, how to exist in places like this. You'll learn when to be silent and when to speak. You'll learn to be what I need you to be. And if I refuse? His thumb pressed against her pulse point. The money stops. The medical care stops. Your brother goes back to Mercy General, and Vitali's people come to collect. That's blackmail. That's reality. He released her wrist. You made a choice 4 days ago. You can't unmake it. They sat in silence while Celine's mind raced. She wanted to scream, to throw the expensive wine in his face, to storm out of this restaurant and never look back. But Danny's face flashed in her mind. Healthy, safe, alive. She was trapped, and Ronan knew it. When does this end? She asked quietly. When I decide it does. And what happens to me until then? You become whatever I need you to be. He signaled for the check. Come. There's somewhere else we need to go. They ended up at another club, this one even more exclusive than Nocturne, if that was possible. The entrance was unmarked, the security armed and alert, the interior a study in dark opulence. Ronan moved through it like a king inspecting his kingdom, and people parted for him without being asked. Celine followed in his wake, wearing her new dress and her new role. He introduced her to men in expensive suits who looked at her with naked calculation. She shook their hands and smiled and said nothing while they talked business in code, shipments and territories and percentages that didn't quite add up to legal enterprise. She met women who looked like they'd been carved from ice and ambition, who smiled at her with sharp, assessing eyes and made comments about her dress, her shoes, how lucky she was to have caught Ronan's attention. She wanted to tell them she hadn't caught anything. She'd been caught. Around midnight, Ronan pulled her into a private booth in the back of the club. Music throbbed through the walls, but here it was muted, distant, just the two of them in leather and shadow. You did well tonight, he said. I stood there and smiled like a trained monkey. You survived your first exposure to my world. That's more than most manage. He poured champagne into 2 glasses. They'll talk about you now. They'll wonder who you are, what you mean to me. That's good. It means they'll be cautious. Cautious of what? Of touching what's mine. There was that word again. Mine. Celine took the champagne because drowning in expensive alcohol seemed preferable to being sober for this conversation. Is that what I am now? A warning sign? Your protection, Ronan said. For yourself and your brother. I don't understand. You will. He leaned back, studying her with those cold, calculating eyes. My world is dangerous, Celine. People who matter to me become targets. But people who believe you matter to me, he smiled without warmth. They become untouchable. So I'm a shield. You're an investment. He drained his champagne. And I protect my investments. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they made her skin crawl. They stayed at the club until nearly 2 a.m. By the time Marcus drove her home, Celine's feet ached from the designer heels, her face hurt from smiling, and her mind was spinning with fragments of conversation she'd overheard. Mentions of docks and shipments, percentages and territory disputes, names that sounded Eastern European and carried weight like weapons. She stumbled into her apartment and collapsed on her bed without bothering to take off the dress. And that's when the phone buzzed again. Unknown number. But she knew who it was before she even looked. Did I give you permission to go to sleep? Ronan's voice, cold and amused. I'm tired, she said into the darkness. And I'm waiting. Waiting for what? For you to thank me for tonight. Celine sat up, fury cutting through exhaustion. Thank you? For parading me around like a prize you won? For keeping you safe? For showing the vultures that you're under my protection? A pause. You think I don't know that Vitali had plans to visit you tonight? That he was going to collect his debt in ways that had nothing to do with money? Her blood went cold. What? I made sure he understood that particular asset is no longer available. His voice was soft, almost intimate. You're welcome. I didn't ask you to, you asked me to save your brother. Everything else is just details. She heard him moving, the rustle of fabric. Get some sleep, Celine. Tomorrow we have a gala to attend. You'll need to look perfect. I don't know how to. You'll learn. He hung up. Celine lay in the dark, still wearing her emerald dress, still feeling the weight of every eye that had assessed her tonight, still feeling the imprint of Ronan's fingers on her wrist, his thumb against her pulse. She thought about calling someone. Her best friend from high school who'd moved upstate, the social worker who'd helped after their mother died. Anyone who might tell her this was salvageable, that she hadn't just sold her soul to the devil in expensive shoes. But who would believe her? Who would understand that she'd traded her life for her brother's, and that some part of her, some small, traitorous part, had felt alive tonight in a way she hadn't felt in years? Outside her window, Blackwater City hummed with late-night traffic. Somewhere in that city, Ronan Drakov was probably still awake, planning his next move, thinking 10 steps ahead of everyone else. And somewhere in that same city, Danny slept peacefully in his hospital bed, his new heart beating steady and strong, because his sister had made a deal with a monster. Celine closed her eyes and tried to convince herself she'd made the right choice. She failed, but she was too tired to care anymore. Tomorrow, there would be another dress, another performance, another step deeper into Ronan Drakov's world. Tonight, she just needed to survive until morning. The gala dress arrived at 6 a.m. in a box the size of a coffin. Celine stood in her apartment doorway, staring at the delivery man who looked like he benched small cars for fun, and wondered if this was what the rest of her life would look like. Expensive things showing up unannounced, delivered by men who could snap her spine without breaking a sweat. Sign here, he said, holding out a tablet. She signed. He left. The box sat in her living room like evidence of a crime she hadn't committed yet. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget, was a dress the color of fresh blood. Not burgundy, not crimson, blood red, with a neckline that plunged to her sternum and a slit up one thigh that would make walking an act of faith. A note was pinned to the bodice in handwriting that looked like it had been carved rather than written. Wear this. Nothing else. Car at 7 p.m. R. Celine held the dress up to the morning light streaming through her window and felt something twist in her chest. It was beautiful in the way knives were beautiful, designed to cut, to draw attention, to make people bleed just by looking at it. She hated it. She hated that it would fit her perfectly. She spent the day trying to pretend everything was normal. She visited Danny at Harrington. He was sitting up, color back in his face, talking about the physical therapy they'd started. He looked more alive than he had in months, and the guilt sat in her stomach like swallowed glass. You look tired, he said, studying her face with those two old eyes. Haven't been sleeping great. Because of whoever's paying for all this? Celine's throat tightened. Danny? I'm not stupid, Lena. I know this costs like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maybe millions. He picked at the hospital blanket. What did you promise them? Nothing you need to worry about. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. She stood, kissed his forehead. I love you, buddy. That's all that matters. But his eyes said he didn't believe her, and Celine left before he could ask more questions she couldn't answer. Odd. The dress fit like it had been made for her body specifically, which it probably had. Someone had measured her at that boutique, taken notes, reported back. The thought made her skin crawl even as she zipped it up and watched herself transform in the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger, dangerous, expensive, the kind of woman who belonged on Ronan Drakov's arm, the kind of woman Celine had never been and didn't know how to become. She did her makeup with shaking hands, more dramatic this time, darker lips, eyes lined sharp enough to cut. Her hair fell in waves that the boutique had taught her how to create with a curling iron she definitely couldn't afford. Shoes that were more architecture than footwear, designed to make her legs look endless and lethal. When the knock came at 7 exactly, she was ready, or as ready as she'd ever be. Marcus stood in the hallway, wearing his usual dark suit and unreadable expression. His eyes flicked over her once, professional assessment, nothing more, and he nodded. Mr. Drakov will be pleased. I don't give a shit what pleases him. Marcus's mouth twitched, almost a smile. That's probably why he likes you. The ride to the gala took 30 minutes through traffic that parted for their SUV like they were carrying a head of state, which, in Blackwater City's criminal hierarchy, they basically were. The venue was the Grand Ballroom at the Meridian Hotel, a historic building downtown that hosted charity events for the wealthy and galas for the powerful, where champagne flowed and money changed hands under the guise of philanthropy. Celine could see the red carpet through the tinted windows. Photographers, news cameras, people in evening wear who looked like they'd been born in designer clothes. "I can't do this," she said, her voice barely audible. "You can," Marcus said, "and you will, because the alternative is worse." He was right. He was always right. The SUV pulled up to the entrance. A valet opened the door, and suddenly Celine was standing on red carpet, under lights bright enough to make her feel naked. Cameras flashed. Someone shouted a question she didn't hear, and then Ronan was there. He materialized out of the crowd like he'd been waiting for her specifically, and every head turned. He wore black tonight, a tuxedo that probably cost more than most people's cars, cut to emphasize the breadth of his shoulders and the predatory grace of his movements. His hair was swept back, his face all sharp angles and cold beauty, and when his eyes found her, something flickered in them that made her breath catch. He offered his arm without a word. Celine took it because refusing wasn't an option, and together they walked through the cameras and the questions and the crowd that parted for them like water around a blade. His arm was solid under her fingers, warm, real. "You look like sin itself," he murmured, his voice pitched only for her. "That was the goal, right? Make me into whatever you needed? I needed you to look like you belonged to me." His hand covered hers on his arm, possessive, deliberate. Mission accomplished. Inside the ballroom was a cathedral of wealth. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto marble floors. A live orchestra played something classical and forgettable. Waiters in white gloves circulated with champagne and canapes that probably had names in French. And everywhere, people who ran this city, politicians and businessmen and society wives, all dressed in their finest and wearing smiles that never reached their eyes. Ronan moved through them like a shark through shallow water, and Celine stayed pressed to his side because letting go felt more dangerous than staying close. He introduced her to a senator whose name she recognized from corruption scandals that had somehow never stuck, a real estate developer who'd bulldozed half the east side to build luxury condos, a woman in diamonds who ran a chain of upscale restaurants and spoke with an accent that suggested finishing schools in Switzerland. They all looked at Celine with the same calculation in their eyes. Who is she? What does she mean to him? How can we use this information? "Ronan, darling," a woman approached, tall and elegant in silver silk, with the kind of face that had definitely been surgically enhanced but expensively enough that you had to look twice to tell. "I heard rumors you were bringing someone new. How refreshing." "Victoria," Ronan's voice held warning. "This is Celine." Victoria's smile sharpened. "Of course, Celine, what a lovely name." Her eyes raked over Celine's dress, her body, assessing and dismissing in the same glance. "Where did you two meet?" "She wandered into my life uninvited," Ronan said smoothly. "I decided to keep her." "How romantic." Victoria's laugh was glass-breaking. "Well, enjoy her while she lasts. You know how these things go." She drifted away, and Celine felt Ronan's hand tighten on her waist. "That's Victoria Marchenko. She used to be in your position." Celine's stomach dropped. "What happened to her?" "She got ambitious, thought she could play games in my world." His voice was flat. "She was wrong." "Is that a threat?" "It's a lesson." He steered her toward the bar. "Victoria wanted to be a player. She wanted power for herself. You're smarter than that." "Am I?" "You're here for your brother, not for yourself." He caught the bartender's attention with a gesture. "That makes you predictable, controllable. You're an asshole." "I'm honest." He accepted 2 glasses of champagne, handed her one. "Victoria thought she could manipulate me. You know you can't. That's the difference." Celine drank the champagne too fast, felt bubbles burn the back of her throat. Around them, the gala swirled. Conversations layered over orchestra music, laughter that sounded like currency being exchanged, deals being made in the spaces between words. She was halfway through her second glass when she felt eyes on her. Not the casual glances she'd been getting all night. This was focused, predatory. She turned and found a man watching her from across the room. He was maybe 40, built like he'd done military time, with a face that looked like it had been broken and badly set more than once. He wore an expensive suit but moved in it like he was uncomfortable, like violence was his natural state and formal wear was just camouflage. Their eyes met and something cold slithered down Celine's spine. "Who is that?" she asked quietly. Ronan followed her gaze and his entire body went still, the kind of stillness that preceded explosions. Viktor Kozlov, Vitali's older brother. The loan shark's brother? The loan shark's boss. Ronan's voice had dropped to something dangerous. He shouldn't be here. Why not? Because I didn't invite him, and people don't come into my territory uninvited. Viktor smiled, started walking toward them. "Stay close to me," Ronan said, his hand sliding to the small of Celine's back. "Don't speak unless he addresses you directly." Viktor closed the distance with the easy confidence of a man who'd killed people and slept fine afterward. Up close, his eyes were the color of dirty ice, and they fixed on Celine like she was a problem he was calculating how to solve. "Drakov," he said, his accent thick and Eastern European. "Beautiful party. Very civilized." "Kozlov?" Ronan's voice could have frozen water. "You weren't on the guest list." "No?" Viktor's smile widened. "My mistake. I must have thought this was a public charity event." His eyes slid to Celine. "And who is this lovely creature?" "None of your concern." "Ah, but I think she is." Viktor took a step closer, and Celine felt Ronan's hand press harder against her back, a warning to stay silent. "You see, I believe we have mutual interest in Miss Vale. My brother lent her money. Money that is owed." "That debt is settled," Ronan said flatly. "Settled? I don't recall receiving payment." "You received compensation for your trouble, more than the debt was worth. But not the interest. Not the penalties." Viktor's smile never reached his eyes. "In my business, when someone takes what belongs to us, there are consequences." The air between the two men crackled with violence waiting to happen. Around them, the gala continued, people laughing, drinking, oblivious to the fact that two predators were about to tear each other apart. "She doesn't belong to you," Ronan said, his voice dropping to something lethal. "She never did. She took our money. That creates obligation." Viktor's eyes returned to Celine, and she felt stripped down, evaluated, priced. Pretty thing like her? She could have worked off that debt in ways that would have been mutually beneficial. Celine's hands clenched into fists. Every instinct screamed at her to speak, to tell this bastard exactly what she thought of him and his mutually beneficial arrangements. But Ronan's hand on her back was a command. "Stay quiet. Let me handle this." "You come into my event," Ronan said, each word precise as a surgical cut, "make threats against what's mine. And expect to walk out of here intact?" "I expect you to remember that your reach isn't infinite, Drakov. You control the ports, the casinos, half the city council. But the streets?" Viktor's smile turned ugly. "The streets belong to people like me. And your little pet here? She lived on our streets before you dressed her up and brought her to your party. Get out! Or what? You'll make a scene at your own charity gala in front of all these respectable people?" Viktor laughed, a sound like gravel in a garbage disposal. "No, you'll smile and shake my hand, and we'll have a conversation about how to properly compensate me for my brother's lost investment." Ronan's hand left Celine's back. Before she could process what was happening, he'd closed the distance to Viktor, one hand wrapped around the other man's throat, squeezing just hard enough to cut off air. The orchestra kept playing, people kept talking, but a circle of space had opened around them, that instinctive recognition of violence about to erupt. "Let me be very clear," Ronan said softly, his face inches from Viktor's, whose face was starting to turn red. "Celine Vale is under my protection. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or even looks at her wrong will find themselves in a shallow grave outside city limits. That includes you. That includes your brother. That includes anyone in your organization stupid enough to test me." He released Viktor, who stumbled back, gasping. "This isn't over," Viktor wheezed. "Yes," Ronan said. "It is." Victor's eyes promised murder, but he turned and walked away, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. Ronan stood there, his posture relaxed but his eyes tracking Victor's every movement, and Celine realized she'd just witnessed something most people didn't live to see. Ronan Dracov making an enemy in public. "We're leaving," Ronan said, his hand finding her waist again. "But the gala is over. For us." He steered her through the crowd, which parted faster now. People had seen what happened, even if they pretended they hadn't. Whispers followed in their wake. By tomorrow, the story would be all over the city. Ronan Dracov had nearly killed Viktor Kozlov over a woman in a red dress. Selena's hands were shaking. She realized it as Marcus pulled the SUV up to the entrance, as Ronan guided her into the back seat with a hand that was surprisingly gentle, despite the violence it had just committed. They drove in silence for 10 minutes before Celine found her voice. "You just made it worse." "I made it clear. He's going to come after me now, you know that, right? You painted a target on my back." Ronan turned to look at her, and in the dim light of the moving car, his eyes were black. "He was always going to come after you, Celine. The moment you took that loan, the moment you couldn't pay it back, you became prey. All I did tonight was make sure everyone understands that you're protected prey." "Protected?" She laughed, hollow and bitter. "Is that what you call it?" "What would you call it?" "Owned, marked, branded." The champagne was making her bold, or maybe it was just exhaustion with this whole performance. "You didn't protect me tonight, Ronan. You claimed me, like property. In my world, there's no difference." "Then your world is fucked." "Yes," he agreed simply. "It is. And you're in it now, whether you like it or not." The SUV pulled up outside her building. Celine reached for the door handle, but Ronan caught her wrist. "Where do you think you're going?" "Home." "Where else?" "Not anymore." His grip was firm but not painful. "Victor knows where you live. Within an hour, he'll have people watching this building. You go up there, you're a sitting duck." "So what am I supposed to do? Live in your penthouse like some kind of kept woman?" "That's exactly what you're going to do." "The hell I am." "Celine." His voice dropped and she heard something underneath the command, something that might have been concern if he was capable of such a thing. "I'm not asking. Viktor Kozlov is dangerous. He's already lost face because of you. He'll want blood to restore his reputation, either mine or yours or both." "I can take care of myself." "No, you can't." He leaned closer, and she could smell his cologne, dark and expensive and somehow comforting despite everything. "You're brave, I'll give you that. You've survived this long on sheer stubborn refusal to die. But this is different. This is war. And you don't survive wars by being brave. You survive by accepting help from people who have more guns." Celine wanted to argue, wanted to rip her arm free and storm up to her apartment and slam the door on all of this. But she thought about Victor's eyes, the cold calculation in them, the way he'd looked at her like meat to be processed. "How long?" she asked quietly. "As long as it takes." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." She let him guide her back into the SUV. They drove to Dracov Tower in silence, and this time when they rode the elevator to the penthouse, Celine felt like she was ascending towards something final, a line being crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. The penthouse looked different at night, less sterile. The city lights outside the floor-to-ceiling windows turned everything into shades of gold and shadow. Ronan shrugged out of his tuxedo jacket, loosened his tie, and suddenly looked less like a crime lord and more like a man at the end of a long day. "Guest room is down that hall," he said, pointing. "Second door on the left. There's clothes in the closet, toiletries in the bathroom. Everything you need." "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the moment I decided to keep you." He poured himself a drink, whiskey, no ice. "I knew it would come to this eventually. Victor or someone like him. They always test boundaries. And I'm the boundary? You're the statement." He took a long swallow. "You're me telling the whole city that I'm done being reasonable." Celine stood in her blood-red dress in this monument to wealth and power, and felt the weight of everything crushing down on her. Danny was safe. That's what mattered. Danny would live, would grow up, would have a future. That's why she'd made this deal. But the cost kept growing. "I need to call my brother," she said. "No calls, not until we're sure Victor doesn't have people listening." He's 14 years old in a hospital bed. He'll worry. I'll have Marcus deliver a message. Something innocuous. Working late. See you tomorrow. Ronan set down his glass. But no personal communication until I say otherwise. That's non-negotiable. Everything with you is non-negotiable. Finally, you're learning. She hated him in that moment. Hated his calm confidence. His absolute certainty that he was right. His complete control over every aspect of her life. Hated that he was probably correct about Victor, about the danger, about all of it. Hated that some small part of her felt safer here than she had in months. I'm going to bed, she said. Celine. She stopped at the hallway entrance, didn't turn around. You did well tonight, Ronan said quietly. At the gala, with Victoria, with Victor, you didn't break. Is that supposed to be a compliment? It's an observation. Most people in your position would have fallen apart by now. Maybe I'm just better at hiding it. Maybe. She heard him move, pour another drink. Or maybe you're stronger than you think. Celine walked to the guest room without responding. Inside, she found exactly what he'd promised. A bedroom bigger than her entire apartment, a closet full of clothes in her size, a bathroom with a tub that looked like it belonged in a spa. Everything carefully chosen, carefully planned. Everything designed to make her comfortable in her cage. She peeled off the red dress, left it in a puddle on the floor, and stood in the shower until the water ran cold. She woke to voices arguing. For a moment, Celine forgot where she was. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, the light coming through the windows too bright. Then reality crashed back. Ronan's penthouse, Victor Kozlov, the red dress and the violence and the trap closing tighter. The voices were coming from somewhere else in the penthouse. Male. Angry. One was definitely Ronan, his voice low and controlled even in fury. The other was unfamiliar. Celine pulled on a robe she found in the closet, black silk because of course, and crept down the hall. They were in Ronan's office, a room she hadn't seen last night, all dark wood and leather and windows overlooking the city. Ronan stood behind his desk, still wearing last night's clothes, looking like he hadn't slept at all. Across from him, a man in his 50s with graying hair and the kind of face that suggested a lifetime of making difficult decisions. Can't protect her forever, the older man was saying. Victor's already making moves. He's reaching out to the other families, using this as evidence that you're going soft. Let him try. I've been preparing for this. You've been preparing to start a war over a woman you met 2 weeks ago? I've been preparing to show the city that I don't respond well to threats. Celine is just the catalyst. She's a liability, Ronan, a pretty little distraction who's going to get you killed. Celine stepped into the doorway. I'm right here, asshole. Both men turned. The older man's eyes widened, surprise, then irritation. Ronan's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his gaze that might have been amusement. Celine, Ronan said calmly, meet Dmitry Volkov, my second in command. Dmitry, this is Celine Vale. Dmitry's jaw tightened. The woman who's about to get us all killed. The woman you were just discussing like she wasn't a person, Celine shot back. She moved into the room, aware of how she must look. Barefoot in a borrowed robe, hair a mess, but too angry to care. And for the record, I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask Ronan to pay my debts, or move me into his penthouse, or start a war with the Kozlovs. He did that himself, because you couldn't keep your mouth shut and your hands clean. Dmitry turned to Ronan. You see what I mean? She's mouthy, undisciplined. She doesn't understand our world, or how to survive in it. She survived well enough before I found her. Barely, and now she's your responsibility, your weakness. My choice, Ronan said, and his voice carried warning. Dmitry raised his hands. Fine, your choice. But when Victor comes, and he will come, don't expect me to throw good men into the fire for her. I expect you to do your job, Dmitry, which is following my orders. The two men stared at each other, and Celine felt the weight of years between them, loyalty tested, trust built and strained, a relationship more complicated than she could parse in a single moment. Finally, Dmitry shook his head. 20 years I've stood beside you, through gang wars and federal investigations and hostile takeovers. I've never questioned your judgment. He glanced at Celine, his expression unreadable. But this is a mistake. He left without waiting for a response. Silence filled the office like smoke after a fire. He's right, Celine said quietly. He's cautious. There's a difference. I am a liability, Ronan. You know it. He knows it. Probably the whole city knows it by now. She crossed to the windows, looked down at Blackwater City waking up below. Traffic starting to move, people heading to jobs, lives happening that had nothing to do with crime lords and loan sharks and blood-red dresses. You should let me go. No. Why not? You've made your point. You've shown Victor and everyone else that you don't back down. Mission accomplished. Now let me disappear and this all goes away. You think that's how it works? Ronan's laugh was harsh. You think Victor will just forget about you because you're not standing next to me anymore? You insulted him by existing, by being the reason I embarrassed him in public. He'll come for you whether you're in my penthouse or back in your shitty apartment. Then I'll leave the city, change my name, take Danny somewhere far away, and live the rest of your life looking over your shoulder? He crossed to her, and she felt the heat of him at her back. Victor's patient. He'll wait months, years. And when you finally let your guard down, when you think you're safe, his people will find you. You can't know that. I do know that, because it's what I would do. Celine turned to face him, and they were too close. Close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the lines around his mouth that suggested he'd spent the night planning for a war he hadn't wanted but would wage anyway. Why are you doing this? She asked. Really? Not the bullshit about showing strength or making statements. Why do you actually care if I live or die? For a long moment he didn't answer, just looked at her with those cold, calculating eyes that missed nothing. Then, you remind me of someone. Who? Myself. 20 years ago, before I learned how to be the monster everyone thinks I am. His hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek, gentle in a way that should have been impossible for someone capable of such violence. You're drowning, and you're angry about it, and you refuse to beg. I understand that. Understanding isn't the same as caring. No, it's not. His thumb traced her lower lip, and Celine's breath caught despite herself. But it's enough for me to want to keep you alive. The moment stretched between them, electric and dangerous. Celine should have stepped back, should have broken the contact, should have reminded herself that this man was a predator and she was prey wearing expensive clothes. Instead, she heard herself say, "What happens when you get bored of keeping me alive?" I don't know. His honesty was more frightening than any lie. I've never kept anyone before. Usually I just... He trailed off. Get rid of them? Make sure they're no longer a problem. Like Victoria? Victoria made choices. Bad ones. His hand dropped. You haven't. Not yet. The threat was implicit. Don't make bad choices, or you'll end up like her. Celine's phone, the one Ronan had given her, buzzed from somewhere in the guest room. She went to retrieve it, Ronan following. The message was from an unknown number. Your brother had a visitor this morning. Nice kid. Would be a shame if something happened to him. Attached was a photo. Danny in his hospital bed, taken through the window from outside. Someone had been close enough to photograph him, close enough to hurt him. Celine's hand started shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Ronan plucked it from her fingers, read the message, and his entire body went rigid. When he looked up, his eyes were black with rage. Marcus, he shouted. Marcus appeared in seconds, as if he'd been waiting just outside. Get a team to Harrington Medical. Full security detail on Daniel Vale. No one gets in that room without my explicit approval. Ronan was already moving, grabbing his phone, making calls. And find out who the fuck got that close to the boy. On it. Marcus vanished. Celine stood frozen, staring at the photo. Someone had been that close to Danny. Close enough to take a picture, close enough to... He's going to be fine, Ronan said, his hand on her shoulder. I have people there within minutes. Victor was making a point, not making a move, not yet. You don't know that. I do. If he wanted your brother dead, he'd be dead. This was a message. I can reach you anywhere. Then we've already lost. Celine's voice came out hollow. He's shown he can get to Danny whenever he wants. So what's the point of all this? The protection, the security, the point, Ronan interrupted, his voice hard, is that Victor just showed his hand. He's declared war, and now I don't have to be subtle anymore. He made 3 more calls in rapid succession, speaking in clipped Russian that Celine didn't understand. When he finally hung up, his expression was carved from ice. Get dressed. We're going to see your brother, and then we're going to have a conversation with the Kozlov family about boundaries. You're going to kill him, Celine said. Not a question. Eventually. But first, I'm going to make sure he understands the cost of threatening what's mine. There was that word again. Mine. And this time, Celine was too terrified for Danny to argue with it. Harrington Medical was swarming with Ronan's people by the time they arrived. Men in suits posted at every entrance, more in the parking garage. Someone had even stationed security inside the hospital itself, disguised as visitors but obviously armed to anyone who knew what to look for. The hospital staff looked nervous but didn't argue. Apparently when Ronan Drakov decided to turn your facility into a fortress, you just let him. Danny's room had 2 guards outside the door. They nodded at Ronan, stepped aside, and Celine pushed in to find her brother sitting up in bed, looking confused and scared. Lena, what's going on? These guys showed up and said I needed protection, and... He stopped when he saw Ronan following her inside. His eyes went wide. Who the hell is that? Danny, this is Ronan. He's the one who's been paying for your treatment. He's the guy from the news. Danny's voice was flat. The crime boss. The one they can't prove killed like 20 people. It was 37, Ronan said mildly. But who's counting? Celine shot him a look that could have melted steel. Not helping. Ronan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching the exchange with those calculating eyes. Danny looked between them, and Celine could see him putting pieces together. Her exhaustion, the expensive clothes she was wearing, the way she stood slightly closer to Ronan than strictly necessary. Lena, Danny said carefully. What did you do? What I had to. Her voice broke on the words. You were dying, Danny. The doctor said you had months, maybe less. No insurance company would cover another transplant. I didn't have the money. I didn't have options. So you went to him? Danny's face twisted. Jesus, Lena, do you have any idea who this guy is? What he does? I know exactly who he is. Then how could you... Danny's monitors started beeping faster, his heart rate spiking. Breathe. Celine moved to his side, took his hand. Just breathe, okay? You're okay. You're safe. Safe? There's armed men outside my door. Someone took a picture of me this morning through the window. How the fuck is that safe? Ronan pushed off the wall. Your sister made a deal to save your life. Now there are people who want to use you to hurt her. So yes, there are guards. Yes, your life has become complicated. But you're alive. That's what matters. That's what matters? Danny's voice cracked. She sold herself to the fucking mafia for me. I didn't sell myself, Celine said quietly. I made a choice, and I'd make it again. But I didn't get a choice. Tears were streaming down Danny's face now. I didn't get to say no. I didn't get to tell you that I'd rather die than have you destroy your life for me. The words hit like a physical blow. Celine felt her knees go weak, felt the room tilt. Danny! Get out. His voice was small, broken. Both of you, just get out. Danny, please. I said get out. His monitors were going crazy now. A nurse pushed into the room, took one look at the situation, and made a shooing motion at Celine and Ronan. You need to leave. Now. He's too agitated. Ronan's hand found the small of Celine's back, guided her toward the door. She went because she didn't know what else to do, because Danny's words were still echoing in her head. I'd rather die than have you destroy your life for me. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and tried to remember how to breathe. He doesn't mean it, Ronan said. Yes, he does. Celine's vision was blurring with tears she refused to shed. He's right. I took away his choice. I decided his life was worth more than mine, and I didn't ask him. He's 14. 14-year-olds don't get to make life and death decisions. And I do? I'm 26 and barely holding it together. She laughed, high and brittle. I'm a waitress. I'm nobody. What made me think I could make deals with people like you and come out intact? Celine, don't. She pushed away from the wall. Don't try to comfort me or tell me it'll be okay. You got what you wanted. You have your statement piece, your proof that you protect your property, and I have a brother who hates me and a debt I can never repay. She started walking toward the elevator, not caring where she was going, just needing to move. Ronan caught up in 3 strides. Where are you going? Anywhere that's not here. There is nowhere, Celine, not anymore. Victor has eyes everywhere. You leave this hospital without me, you're dead within an hour. Maybe that's easier. He grabbed her arm, spun her around to face him. For the first time since she'd met him, Ronan Drakov looked angry. Truly, viscerally angry. Don't say that. Don't ever fucking say that. Why do you care? Because... He stopped himself, jaw clenched. Because I've put resources into keeping you alive. Because letting you die now would be a waste. Because I'm yours, she finished bitterly. Your property, your investment. Yes. God damn it. Yes. His grip tightened. Is that what you want to hear? That I'm selfish and controlling and I've trapped you in a situation you can't escape? Fine. It's true. All of it. But you're alive. Your brother is alive. And that's worth something. Is it? Celine felt something break open in her chest. All the fear and exhaustion and fury she'd been bottling up for 2 weeks. Because right now, it feels like I'm drowning slower. Like you've just extended how long it takes for me to hit bottom. Ronan's eyes searched hers, and whatever he saw there made his expression shift into something complicated, something almost human. Come with me, he said, releasing her arm. There's something I need to show you. Months. They took the elevator down to the parking garage, got into the SUV with Marcus driving and 2 more vehicles following as escort. Celine didn't ask where they were going, didn't care. She stared out the window and watched Blackwater City pass by in a blur of concrete and glass and lives that weren't hers. 20 minutes later, they pulled up outside a building on the east side, the poor side where Celine had grown up. It was a community center, old but well-maintained, with kids' artwork in the windows and a sign that read, East Side Youth Services. Why are we here? Celine asked. Ronan didn't answer, just got out of the car and walked toward the entrance. Celine followed, because what else was she going to do? Inside, the center smelled like industrial cleaner and hope. That specific combination of trying hard with limited resources. There was a rec room with donated couches and board games, a computer lab with ancient machines that probably barely ran, a kitchen where someone was making lunch that smelled like canned soup and love. A woman in her 50s with gray hair and smile lines looked up as they entered. Ronan, we weren't expecting you today. Unplanned visit, Maria. I wanted to show someone the place. Maria's eyes slid to Celine, warm and curious. Of course. You're always welcome, you know that. She bustled off to check on the lunch situation, and Ronan led Celine down a hallway lined with photos, kids playing basketball, doing homework, celebrating birthdays. At the end was an office, small but organized, with a window overlooking the rec room. I grew up 3 blocks from here, Ronan said, looking out that window. My mother OD'd when I was 8. Father was never in the picture. I bounced between foster homes and the street until I was 12, when I started running errands for the Volkov organization. Celine stayed silent, letting him talk. By 15, I was moving product. By 18, I'd killed my first man, a rival dealer trying to expand into our territory. By 25, I'd taken over the organization through a combination of strategy and violence that most people still don't believe was possible. He turned to face her. I built an empire on blood and fear. I'm not a good man, Celine. I've never pretended to be. Then why show me this? Because 15 years ago, I bought this building, anonymously, through shell corporations that can't be traced back to me. I fund the youth programs, the after-school tutoring, the meal services. I make sure kids who grew up like I did have somewhere to go that isn't the street. Why? Because I remember what it felt like to be hungry, to be invisible, to know that no one gave a shit whether you lived or died. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. I can't change what I am, but I can make sure some kids don't become what I became. Celine looked out at the rec room where a group of teenagers were playing basketball with an enthusiasm that transcended their mismatched sneakers and worn-out clothes. You're trying to buy redemption, she said. No, redemption isn't possible for people like me. I'm trying to balance the scales. It's not the same thing. And showing me this is supposed to make me feel better about being trapped in your world? No. He moved closer. Showing you this is supposed to help you understand that I see you, Celine. I see that you're drowning. I see that you made an impossible choice, and I see that you hate me for it." His hand found her face, tilted it up to his. "But I also see that you're stronger than you think, and that strength is valuable." "To who? You?" "To yourself." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "You think you've destroyed your life for your brother, but what I see is someone who fought for the person they love using the only weapons available. That's not weakness, that's survival. Survival in a cage is still a cage. Yes, but it's better than being dead." Celine wanted to argue, wanted to push him away, wanted to scream that this wasn't enough. That community centers and anonymous donations didn't make up for the fact that he'd taken her life and reshaped it into something she didn't recognize. But standing there in that office, watching kids who looked like she'd looked at their age, hungry, tired, fighting for every inch of ground, she understood something. Ronan Drakov was a monster, but he was a monster who remembered being prey. That didn't excuse anything, didn't change the fact that she was trapped, but it complicated the picture in ways she hadn't expected. "Victor's going to come for me," she said quietly. "You know that." "Yes." "And you're going to fight back. People are going to die." "Yes." "Because of me. Because Victor doesn't understand boundaries. Because he thinks he can take what's mine without consequences." Ronan's hand dropped from her face. "This was always going to happen, Celine. You were just the spark. The fuel was already there." "That's not comforting." "It's not meant to be. It's just the truth." They stood there in silence, watching the kids play, and Celine felt the weight of everything crushing down. Danny's tears, Victor's threat, the blood-red dress, and the violence that followed her everywhere now. And Ronan, standing beside her like a dark star, pulling her into his orbit, destroying everything she'd been, reshaping her into something new, something that could survive in his world, or die trying. "When it happens," she said finally, "when Victor makes his move, I want to be armed." Ronan's head turned sharply. "What?" "You heard me. If I'm going to be in this life, if I'm going to be your whatever I am, then I'm not going to be helpless. Teach me to shoot. Teach me to fight. Teach me how to survive when you're not standing between me and the wolves." For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then, "You're sure?" "I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you what I need." Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition that she'd just crossed a line from victim to participant. "All right," he said. "We start tomorrow." "We start today," Celine corrected. "Right now, because Victor's already moved, and I'm done being the damsel you have to rescue." Ronan's smile was sharp and approving. "Then let's go." They left the community center, got back in the SUV, and Celine felt something settle in her chest. Not peace. Nothing about this life would ever be peaceful. But resolve. She was trapped in Ronan Drakov's world. Fine. But she'd be damned if she went down without learning how to fight back. And somewhere in Blackwater City, Viktor Kozlov was making his plans, gathering his people, preparing to strike at the woman who'd embarrassed him and the man who'd protected her. The war was coming. Celine just decided she wouldn't face it unarmed. The gun was heavier than Celine expected. She stood in the basement shooting range of Drakov Tower, a facility she hadn't known existed until Marcus led her down 3 levels below the parking garage, with the weight of cold steel in her hands and Ronan behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat of him against her back. "Glock 19, he said, his voice low and clinical. 15 rounds. Standard issue for most of my people. Easy to conceal, reliable, won't jam if you maintain it properly." "I don't know how to maintain it." "You will." His hands came around her, adjusting her grip. "Trigger finger along the frame until you're ready to shoot. Both hands, firm but not strangling it. Feet shoulder-width apart." The range stretched out before them, concrete and soundproofing and paper targets hanging at various distances. Empty shell casings littered the floor from previous sessions. The air smelled like gunpowder and oil. "Aim for center mass," Ronan continued. "Don't try for headshots. That's movie bullshit. You want to stop the threat, you aim for the largest target." Celine raised the gun, lined up the sights with the paper silhouette 15 feet away. Her hands were shaking. "Breathe," Ronan said. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. Squeeze the trigger on the exhale. Don't jerk it." She followed his instructions. Breathed. Squeezed. The gun kicked in her hands with a force that traveled up her arms. The sound was deafening even through the ear protection. The bullet punched through the target's shoulder, off-center, but a hit. Again, Ronan said. She fired. And again. And again. By the 15th shot, her ears were ringing despite the protection, her hands ached, and the target looked like it had been attacked by an angry drunk. Holes scattered across the chest and shoulders, one in the head that she was pretty sure was an accident. Acceptable for day one, Ronan said, taking the gun from her. He ejected the magazine with practiced ease, cleared the chamber, set it on the bench. Tomorrow we'll work on speed. The day after, moving targets. Within a week, you'll be competent enough to defend yourself in close quarters. And then what? I just walk around armed like one of your soldiers? You walk around knowing how to kill someone if they try to hurt you. Yes. He pulled out another gun, smaller, silver instead of black. This is a SIG P365. Smaller frame, easier to conceal. 7 rounds. You'll carry this once you're trained. Celine stared at the weapon. 2 hours ago, she'd been a waitress drowning in debt. Now she was learning to shoot people. This is insane, she muttered. This is survival. Ronan holstered both guns, turned to face her. Victor won't send amateurs, Celine. When he comes, and he will come, it'll be professionals. Men who've killed before and won't hesitate. You need to be ready to fight back. I don't want to kill anyone. No one does. Until it's you or them. His eyes were hard. Then the choice becomes very simple. They spent another hour in the range. Ronan drilled her on loading, unloading, clearing jams, proper stance. Her hands cramped, her shoulders burned. But she kept going because the alternative was being helpless, and helpless got you dead in Ronan's world. When they finally emerged back into the penthouse, it was nearly 7 p.m. Celine's clothes smelled like gunpowder, her hands were black with residue, and exhaustion pulled at her like gravity. Shower, Ronan said. Then dinner. We need to discuss next steps. What next steps? I learned to shoot. Victor eventually makes his move. People die. That's the plan, right? That's the inevitability. The plan is more nuanced. He headed toward his office. 30 minutes. Celine showered in the guest bathroom, scrubbing the gun residue from her hands, watching black water circle the drain. When she looked in the mirror afterward, she barely recognized herself. Her eyes looked harder, older, like something fundamental had shifted. She dressed in clothes from the closet Ronan had stocked. Black jeans, a soft gray sweater that probably cost more than her old monthly rent. Normal clothes. Except nothing about her life was normal anymore. Ronan was waiting in the dining room, a space she hadn't used before, all dark wood and subtle lighting. Food was already laid out, something that looked expensive and complicated, probably prepared by a private chef she'd never met. Sit, he said. She sat, picked up a fork, pushed food around her plate without tasting it. You're distracted, Ronan observed. I'm thinking about my brother, wondering if he'll ever forgive me. He will, eventually, when he's old enough to understand that you saved his life. Or he'll spend the rest of his life hating me for it. Celine set down her fork. You said we need to discuss next steps. So, discuss. Ronan leaned back in his chair, studying her with those calculating eyes. Victor has 3 options. He can come at you directly, kidnapping, assassination attempt. He can come at your brother again, use him as leverage, or he can come at me through my business operations, try to weaken my position enough that I can't protect you. Which will he choose? Probably all 3 simultaneously. That's what I'd do. He took a sip of wine. So we need to be prepared for multiple fronts. Your brother stays at Harrington with full security. You stay here or with me at all times, and my people start fortifying our operations against sabotage. Sounds expensive. War is always expensive, but losing is more expensive. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. Excuse me. He stood and walked to the windows, taking the call in Russian. Celine couldn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Sharp, controlled fury barely leashed. When he hung up, his expression was carved from ice. What? Celine asked. One of my warehouses was hit tonight. The one on the South Docks. Burned to the ground. Victor? Almost certainly. The timing is too convenient. He made another call. Dmitri. The warehouse fire. I want every piece of evidence collected. I want to know exactly how they got past our security. A pause. No. We don't retaliate yet. Let him think he's winning. When we move, it'll be decisive. He ended the call and returned to the table, but his food sat untouched. How much did you lose? Celine asked quietly. $3 million in inventory, another $1 million in infrastructure. He said it like discussing the weather. Chump change in the grand scheme, but it's a statement. Victor's showing me he can hit my operations whenever he wants. So hit him back. Not yet. He's expecting immediate retaliation. He's prepared for that. So we let him get comfortable. Let him think I'm weak, distracted by you. Ronan's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. And then we take everything. Celine's phone buzzed, the one Ronan had given her. She pulled it out, expecting another threatening message from Victor. Instead, it was from Harrington Medical Center, an official notification. Daniel Vale has been discharged at the request of his legal guardian. All follow-up appointments have been canceled. The world tilted. What? Celine's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. What the fuck does this mean? Ronan took the phone, read the message, and his expression went lethal. Marcus! Marcus appeared within seconds. Boss? Who authorized Daniel Vale's discharge? No one. He's supposed to be under watch, full security detail. Then why the fuck do I have a message saying he's been discharged? Marcus was already on his phone, making calls. Celine sat frozen, her mind unable to process what this meant. Danny had been discharged. Danny was gone. Victor had him. The security detail is reporting in, Marcus said, his face pale. They're still at the hospital, still guarding an empty room. The boy was transferred 2 hours ago for additional testing. Never came back. Find him. Ronan's voice could have frozen blood. I want every resource we have on this. I want traffic cameras, hospital records. I want to know who signed that transfer order and where they took him. On it. Marcus vanished. Celine couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except stare at the message on her phone. Danny was gone. Victor had taken him, and she'd been here, learning to shoot guns and eating expensive food while her brother was being kidnapped. This is my fault, she whispered. It's Victor's fault. He's escalating faster than I anticipated. You said he'd use Danny to get to me. You said we were prepared. Her voice was rising, hysteria creeping in at the edges. How is this prepared? How is my 14-year-old brother missing prepared? Celine, don't. She stood so fast her chair fell backward. Don't tell me it's going to be okay. Don't tell me you'll find him. You promised he'd be safe. You promised. I promised I'd protect him. And I will. But Victor's not stupid. He planned this. Waited until... Oh. Celine's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She grabbed it before Ronan could. A video file. Her hand shook as she pressed play. Danny appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like a basement. His hospital gown was gone, replaced by regular clothes. His face was pale but uninjured. Behind him, barely visible in the shadows, were men with guns. Lena, Danny's voice was steady, trying to be brave. They said I should tell you I'm okay, that they haven't hurt me, yet. He swallowed hard. They want you to come alone. If you bring Drakov or any of his people, they'll... His voice cracked. They'll kill me. You have 24 hours. The video cut to black, then a text. Pier 17, tomorrow midnight. Come alone or the boy dies. Celine stared at the screen until the words lost meaning. Pier 17. Midnight. Alone. It was a trap. Obviously a trap. Victor didn't want just Danny. He wanted her. Wanted to use her against Ronan, to draw him into a confrontation he couldn't win. Or maybe he just wanted to hurt them both. I'm going, she said. No. Ronan's voice was flat. You're not. He's my brother. And it's a trap designed to get you killed. I don't care. Celine turned to face him, and whatever he saw in her expression made him go still. I made this deal to save Danny's life. I destroyed my own life for him. I'm not going to let him die because I was too scared to walk into a trap. Celine, be reasonable. Reasonable? She laughed, high and brittle. There's nothing reasonable about any of this. I'm living in a crime lord's penthouse, learning to shoot people, while my brother gets kidnapped because I exist. Reasonable left the building weeks ago. Then let me send my people. We'll scout the location, set up counter surveillance. They said come alone. You think Victor's stupid? He'll have eyes everywhere. Anyone shows up with me, Danny dies. So you die instead? That's your plan? My plan is to save my brother. What happens to me after that? She shrugged. Honestly, doesn't matter anymore. Ronan crossed to her in 3 strides, grabbed her shoulders. It matters to me. Why? Because I'm your investment, your property? She tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. You'll find another woman to play dress-up with, another statement piece to show the city how powerful you are. Is that what you think this is? His voice dropped to something dangerous. After everything, you think you're just a trophy to me? What else would I be? For a moment, they stood there, inches apart, breathing hard. Then Ronan's hand slid from her shoulders to her face, holding her like she was something precious and breakable. You're the first real thing in my life in 20 years, he said quietly. Everyone around me wants something. Everyone performs, lies, manipulates. But you? His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. You walked into my world and refused to pretend. You're angry and scared, and you don't hide it. You're real, Celine. That's why this matters. That's why you matter. Pretty words from a man who owns me. I don't want to own you. His forehead pressed against hers. I want you to choose to stay. How can I choose anything when you control every aspect of my life? You can't. Not yet. He pulled back, and his eyes were full of something complicated, something that looked almost like pain. But after this, after we get Danny back, I'll let you go. Completely. I'll make sure you and your brother have money, protection, new identities if you want them. You'll never have to see me again. Celine's throat tightened. You're lying. I'm not. But there's a condition. His hands dropped. You let me handle this my way. You don't walk into Victor's trap. You trust me to get your brother back alive. And if you can't, then you can hate me for the rest of your life. He stepped back. But give me a chance to fix this before you throw yourself into a situation you won't survive. Celine wanted to argue, wanted to scream that she didn't trust him, didn't trust anyone, that the only person she could rely on was herself. But the truth was, she had no plan, no resources, no idea how to get Danny back except walking into Victor's trap and hoping for the best. And hoping wasn't a strategy. 24 hours, she said finally. You have until tomorrow midnight. If you haven't found him by then, I'm going to Pier 17. Deal. Master. The next 23 hours were the longest of Celine's life. Ronan's people worked through the night, pulling traffic camera footage, bribing hospital staff for information, tracking down everyone who'd been near Danny's room in the hours before his disappearance. Celine sat in Ronan's office and watched it happen, watched him orchestrate a small army with the same cold efficiency he probably used to run his criminal empire. Marcus coordinated field teams. Dmitri worked his contacts in the police department. Other people whose names Celine didn't know called in favors from across the city. And through it all, Ronan sat at his desk making calls in 3 different languages, his expression never changing, his voice never rising. Around 3 a.m., Celine couldn't take the waiting anymore. She stood and walked to the windows, looking down at Blackwater City sprawled below. Somewhere in that tangle of streets and buildings, Danny was being held by men who'd kill him without hesitation if it served their purposes. We'll find him, Ronan said from behind her. You don't know that. I do. Victor's not trying to hide. He wants me to know he has Danny. He wants me to know he can reach my people, hurt them, take them whenever he wants. Ronan stood beside her. That arrogance will be his downfall. Or yours. Possibly. He was quiet for a moment. If it comes to that, if I have to choose between getting your brother back and protecting my empire, I'll choose your brother. Celine turned to look at him. Why? Because you chose him, and I'm choosing you. His expression was unreadable. That's how this works, Celine. You protect what matters. Everything else is negotiable. Before she could respond, Marcus burst into the office. We found him. Celine's heart stopped. Where? Old meatpacking plant on the industrial east side. One of Victor's subsidiary operations. We've had eyes on it for an hour. Danny's alive, appears unharmed, but there's at least 20 men guarding the location. How many people do we have? Ronan asked. 40, within striking distance. More if we wait. We don't wait. Victor expects me to either walk into his trap at Pier 17 or try to negotiate. He won't be prepared for a direct assault on his safe house. Ronan was already moving, pulling weapons from a safe Celine hadn't known was hidden behind the bookshelf. We hit them in 6 hours. Dawn. When they're tired and their guard is down. Boss, this is risky. If we're wrong about the location, we're not wrong. Victor wants me to know where Danny is. He's baiting me into making a mistake, so I'm going to make the mistake he doesn't expect. Ronan loaded a gun with practiced ease. Get everyone in position, full tactical gear. This isn't a negotiation. Marcus left to coordinate. Ronan continued arming himself, guns, knives, body armor that he strapped on with the ease of long practice. What can I do? Celine asked. Stay here, stay safe. Like hell. Celine, he's my brother. I'm not sitting in your penthouse while you go to war for him. You'll be a liability. You've had 1 day of weapons training. You'll get yourself killed or distract my people trying to protect you. Then give me a gun and tell me where to stand. She crossed to the weapons safe, pulled out the SIG he'd shown her in the range. You said I need to learn to survive in your world. This is me surviving. Ronan stared at her for a long moment. Then, you stay with Marcus. You follow his orders exactly. And if things go bad, you run. You don't try to be a hero. Understood? Understood. I'm serious, Celine. These are professionals. They won't hesitate to kill you. Good thing I'm learning not to hesitate either. She loaded the gun the way he'd taught her, checked the chamber, holstered it in the waistband of her jeans. It felt foreign and terrifying and somehow right. Ronan watched her with an expression she couldn't read. Then he crossed to her, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was possessive and desperate and tasted like goodbye. Celine kissed him back because she didn't know if either of them would survive the next few hours. And if this was their last moment, she wanted it to be real. When he pulled away, his eyes were dark. When this is over. Don't, she interrupted. Don't make promises about after. Let's just survive today. Deal. Eek. They assembled in the parking garage as dawn broke over Blackwater City. 40 men, all armed, all wearing black tactical gear that made them look like a private military force, which, Celine supposed, they basically were. Marcus handed her a vest. Put this on. It's not bulletproof, but it'll help. She strapped it on, feeling the weight of it settle on her shoulders. Around her, Ronan's people checked weapons, loaded magazines, communicated in clipped military language that suggested most of them had done this before. Ronan moved through them like a general inspecting troops, stopping to speak with various team leaders, making adjustments to the plan. When he reached Celine, his expression softened slightly. Last chance to stay behind. Not taking it. Stubborn. Survival trait. His mouth quirked, almost a smile. Then he turned to address the assembled group. Victor Kozlov has taken something that belongs to me. We're going to take it back. Rules are simple. Anyone who surrenders gets to live. Anyone who fights dies. Anyone who touches the boy dies slowly. His voice carried across the garage, cold and absolute. We go in hard. We go in fast. And we don't leave until Daniel Vale is secured. Questions? Silence. Good. Move out. They split into multiple vehicles, black SUVs that screamed criminal enterprise. Celine rode with Marcus and 3 other men whose names she didn't know and didn't ask. The drive to the east side took 20 minutes through early morning traffic, and with every mile, Celine's heart beat faster. She was going into a gunfight. She might die in the next hour. Danny might already be dead. The thought spiraled until Marcus's hand landed on her shoulder. Breathe, he said quietly. Panic gets you killed. Focus on the moment. She focused on breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth, just like Ronan had taught her in the range. The meatpacking plant materialized out of the industrial wasteland, a sprawling complex of brick buildings and rusted metal, abandoned for years except for the black cars parked outside and the men with guns pacing the perimeter. The convoy stopped 3 blocks away. Ronan gathered his team leaders for final instructions, drawing diagrams in the air, assigning positions. Celine stood next to Marcus and tried to look competent. You stay behind me, Marcus said. You keep your head down. You only shoot if someone is actively trying to kill you. Got it? Got it. I mean it, Celine. This isn't the movies. People die in seconds. Bullets don't care about courage or justice or any of that shit. They just kill. I understand. He didn't look convinced, but there was no more time. Ronan gave the signal, and they moved. The assault was coordinated chaos. Teams split off, surrounding the building from multiple angles. Celine followed Marcus through an alley that smelled like rotting garbage and stale urine, her gun drawn, her hand surprisingly steady. The first shot cracked through the morning air. Then everything exploded. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Men shouted in Russian and English. Glass shattered. Celine pressed against a wall while Marcus and his team advanced, firing with the kind of precision that spoke to extensive training. One of Victor's men appeared at the end of the alley, gun raised. Marcus shot him twice, center mass, just like Ronan had taught her, and the man dropped. "Move!" Marcus shouted. They pushed through a side door into the plant interior. It was a maze of old equipment and hanging chains, shadows, and ambient light from grimy windows. More gunfire echoed from somewhere deeper in the building. A man burst from behind a pillar, gun aimed at Marcus's head. Celine didn't think. She just raised her cig and fired. The kick traveled up her arms. The sound was deafening, and the man stumbled, blood blooming on his shoulder where she'd hit him. Not center mass, not even close to lethal, but enough. Marcus finished him with a headshot and kept moving. "Good," he said tersely. "Stay alert." They cleared rooms one by one, found two more of Victor's men, and put them down. The building reeked of old blood and rust and fear. Somewhere ahead, Celine could hear more intense fighting, the sound of Ronan's main force engaging. They pushed through a set of double doors into what had once been the main processing floor. And there, in the center of the vast space, surrounded by armed men, was Danny. He was tied to a chair but appeared unhurt. His eyes went wide when he saw Celine. And that's when everything went wrong. The doors behind them slammed shut, lights flooded on overhead, bright and blinding, and Viktor Kozlov's voice echoed through speakers Celine hadn't noticed. "Welcome, Drakov. I've been waiting for you." Ronan and his main force were pinned down behind old equipment, taking fire from elevated positions. More of Victor's men emerged from concealment, at least 30, maybe more. They'd walked into an ambush. "You're predictable," Victor's voice continued, amused. "I knew you'd come for the boy. Knew you'd bring your little army. So I prepared a better trap than the one at Pier 17. Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. "Victor, this is between us. Let the boy go." "Between us? No, Drakov. This is about respect, about consequences." Victor himself appeared on a catwalk above them, flanked by bodyguards. "You embarrassed me at your gala. You claimed this woman like she was yours to take. You forgot that in this city there are still rules." "The only rule is strength," Ronan shouted back. "And you just proved you don't have enough." "Is that so?" Victor smiled. "I have your woman's brother. I have your people trapped in a kill box. And I have enough firepower to end this however I choose." He pulled out a phone. "One call, and the boy dies. Another call, and explosives I've planted throughout this building detonate. You can't win this, Drakov, but you can surrender. Never. Then watch your people die." Victor made a gesture, and his men opened fire. The battle became a massacre. Ronan's people fired back, but they were caught in a crossfire with no good cover. Men fell. Blood sprayed across concrete. Celine pressed herself behind a metal support beam while Marcus returned fire, his expression grim. They were losing. Ronan was going to die trying to save her brother, and it was all her fault. Celine looked at Danny, terrified, crying, trying to be brave while men died around him. Looked at Ronan, bleeding from a graze on his arm, still fighting like death itself. Looked at Marcus, loyal and doomed, and made a decision. She stepped out from cover. "Stop!" Her voice cut through the gunfire. "Victor, I'll trade myself for Danny. That's what you want, right? Me? Celine, get back!" Ronan's voice was raw. But she kept walking forward, hands raised, gun dangling from one finger. The shooting slowed, stopped. Victor leaned over the catwalk railing, studying her with interest. "You'll trade yourself? Willingly?" "Yes. Let Danny go. Let Ronan's people leave. And I'm yours." "Celine, no." Ronan started forward, but two of his own men held him back. Victor laughed. "You hear that, Drakov? Your woman loves her brother more than she fears death. How touching. He gestured, and two of his men approached Celine, took her gun, grabbed her arms. Bring her up. They hauled her toward the stairs leading to the catwalk. Celine didn't resist. Didn't look back at Ronan, whose face had gone white with fury and something that might have been fear. She'd made her choice. Danny would live. Ronan would live. And she'd pay whatever price Victor demanded. They pushed her onto the catwalk. Victor grabbed her chin, tilted her face up to his. Brave little thing, aren't you? His breath smelled like tobacco and decay. Or just stupid. Let my brother go. That was the deal. Was it? He released her chin. Because I don't recall agreeing to anything. Celine's stomach dropped. You said... I said many things. But here's the truth, little girl. Victor leaned close, his voice dropping to something intimate and terrible. I don't want you. You're nothing. A waitress playing dress-up in a world you don't understand. He turned to Ronan, still pinned below. What I want is for you to watch her die. To understand that claiming things in my territory has consequences. He pulled out a gun, put it to Celine's head. Time crystallized. Celine saw Ronan's face twist with something beyond rage. Saw Marcus raising his weapon, knowing he couldn't make the shot. Saw Danny screaming her name. Saw Victor's finger tighten on the trigger. And then the world exploded. The blast came from beneath the catwalk, timed perfectly. Victor's feet went out from under him. His shot went wild, grazing Celine's cheek instead of punching through her skull. The catwalk shook, metal screaming. Dimitri emerged from the shadows below, flanked by another 20 men. The cavalry. Now! Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. His people, no longer pinned, surged forward. The ambush became a slaughter, but this time, Victor's men were the ones dying. Precise shots, coordinated movements, everything Ronan's empire had been built on. Celine's ears rang. Blood ran down her face from the graze wound. Victor was on his knees beside her, stunned by the explosion. She looked at him, this man who'd threatened her brother, who'd tried to kill her, and felt something cold settle in her chest. The gun he'd dropped was 3 feet away. She could reach it, should reach it, because if she didn't, he'd eventually recover. Eventually come after her again, eventually hurt Danny or Ronan or someone else she cared about. The choice was simple. Survival. Celine lunged for the gun. Victor realized what was happening and grabbed her ankle, but she kicked him in the face with her free foot, grabbed the weapon, rolled onto her back. Victor loomed over her, blood streaming from his nose, murder in his eyes. She pulled the trigger. Once, twice, 3 times, center mass, just like Ronan had taught her. Victor stumbled backward, hit the catwalk railing, and toppled over. His body hit the concrete below with a sound that would haunt Celine for the rest of her life. Silence crashed down. The surviving members of Victor's crew dropped their weapons, hands raised. Ronan's people secured them with brutal efficiency. And Celine lay on the catwalk, holding a smoking gun, staring at the blood on her hands. She'd killed a man. Celine! Ronan was suddenly there, pulling her up, checking the wound on her face. Jesus Christ, I thought, I'm fine. Her voice sounded distant, disconnected. Danny? Where's Danny? Safe. Marcus has him. Ronan cupped her face gently, avoiding the graze. You're in shock. You need medical attention. I killed him. The words came out flat. I shot him, and he fell, and he's dead. Yes, you did. Because if you hadn't, he would have killed you. Ronan's voice was firm. You survived, Celine. That's what matters. But looking down at Victor's broken body below, at the blood soaking into concrete, at the gun still in her shaking hands, Celine wasn't sure survival was the same thing as winning. She'd become exactly what this world demanded, a killer. And there was no going back from that. The aftermath was controlled chaos. Dimitri coordinated cleanup, bodies removed, witnesses paid off, evidence disappeared. This was what Ronan's empire did, made problems vanish like they'd never existed. Celine sat in the back of an SUV while a medic cleaned and bandaged the graze on her face. Danny was beside her, wrapped in a blanket, refusing to let go of her hand. You could have died, he said for the 10th time. But I didn't. You could have. For me? Again, his voice broke. Lena, when does it stop? When do you stop almost dying to keep me alive? Never, she said simply. That's what family means. Ronan appeared at the SUV door. We need to move. Police will be here within 20 minutes, despite how much we're paying them to look the other way. They drove back to Drakov Tower in a convoy, nobody speaking. When they arrived, Ronan set Danny up in a guest room with food and a television and guards outside the door. Then he took Celine to his office, closed the door, and poured them both whiskey. Drink, he said. She drank. It burned, but the pain was grounding. You saved my life, Ronan said quietly. If you hadn't traded yourself, Victor would have killed us all. I didn't save anyone. I just delayed the inevitable until Dmitri showed up. Dmitri showed up because I planned for the ambush, because I knew Victor would try something like this. He took a long swallow of whiskey. But I didn't plan for you to walk into gunfire. That was pure courage. Or insanity. Possibly both. I killed him. Celine stared at her hands. I looked him in the eyes, and I pulled the trigger, and I felt nothing. What does that make me? Alive. Ronan set down his glass, moved to crouch in front of her chair. You did what you had to do to survive. That's not a crime. That's not a sin. That's just reality. Is this what your world does, turns people into killers? My world reveals what people already are. His hand found hers. You've always been a survivor, Celine. You've been fighting your entire life, fighting poverty, fighting the system, fighting to keep your brother alive. This was just another fight. The stakes were just higher. I don't feel like a survivor. I feel like I'm drowning. You are, but you're still breathing. That's what counts. They sat in silence while the city woke up outside, ignorant of the battle that had been waged in an abandoned meatpacking plant. Ignorant that Viktor Kozlov was dead, and the balance of power in Blackwater's underworld had just shifted. You promised, Celine said finally. After we got Danny back, you'd let me go. Give me a choice. I did promise that. Ronan's eyes searched hers. Do you want to go? I don't know. It was the most honest thing she'd said in weeks. Part of me wants to run as far as I can from all of this. From you, from this world, from the person I became today. And the other part? The other part knows I can't go back. I can't unknow how to shoot. Can't unkill Victor. Can't pretend I'm just a waitress drowning in debt. She met his gaze. I'm in your world now, whether I want to be or not. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. She squeezed his hand. I'm staying, Ronan. Not because you're forcing me, not because I owe you, but because I've already crossed lines I can't uncross. And if I'm going to be this person, this killer, this survivor, I'd rather do it standing next to someone who understands. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe. Or recognition. Then we do this differently, he said. No more cages, no more controlling every aspect of your life. You want to leave? You leave. You want to make your own choices? You make them. You want to tell me to go to hell? You tell me. And if I do, tell you to go to hell? Then I'll deserve it. Probably. His mouth quirked. But I'll also fight like hell to change your mind. Because you're right. You've crossed lines. And on this side of those lines, you're remarkable. Celine laughed, a broken, exhausted sound. You have a fucked up definition of remarkable. Welcome to my world. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was different this time, not desperate or possessive, but something that tasted like choice, like partnership, like two broken people deciding to be broken together. When she pulled back, Ronan was smiling, actually smiling. What happens now? She asked. Now? We figure out how to live with who we've become. He stood, pulled her up with him. Your brother stays here until we're sure there's no retaliation from Victor's organization. You continue training, weapons, combat, everything you need to actually survive in this world. And we rebuild. Rebuild what? Whatever we want. His hands framed her face. You're not my prisoner anymore, Celine. You're my partner. If you want to be. Partners in crime? She arched an eyebrow. Pretty sure that makes me a criminal. You killed a man this morning. That ship has sailed. Fair point. They stood there in his office while dawn light flooded through the windows, painting everything gold. Outside, Blackwater City sprawled like a promise or a threat, a place where people like them could build empires or burn everything down. Celine had walked into Ronan Dracov's world as prey. She'd survived as something else entirely. And the most terrifying part? She was starting to like who she'd become. The monster standing beside the monster, ready to face whatever came next. Together. The war started 3 days after Victor's body was found floating in the harbor. Celine was in Ronan's private gym, running through drills with Marcus, when the first explosion rattled the windows of Dracov Tower. The sound rolled across the city like thunder, and she knew, with the cold certainty that came from living in Ronan's world, that everything was about to get worse. Marcus's phone lit up instantly. He answered, listened, his face going hard. The casino on 5th. Car bomb. At least 6 dead, maybe more. Victor's people? Celine asked, breathing hard from the workout. Victor's brother, Alexei Kozlov. He's taking over the organization and he wants blood. Ronan appeared in the gym doorway, already dressed in body armor, his expression carved from ice. Celine, Danny, safe room, now. I'm not hiding. This isn't a discussion. His voice carried the kind of authority that moved armies. Alexei's not Victor. He's smarter, more vicious, and he's not interested in games. He wants me dead, which means everyone close to me is a target. Then give me a gun and let me fight. No. Ronan crossed to her, gripped her shoulders. You've had 2 weeks of training. Alexei's people are professionals, former military mercenaries, men who've survived wars. You go up against them, you die, and I'm not losing you because you're brave and stupid. Ronan, safe room. That's an order. He released her and turned to Marcus. Get them both secured. Full lockdown protocol. No one in or out without my authorization. Marcus nodded and grabbed Celine's arm. She wanted to resist, to argue, but the look in Ronan's eyes stopped her. It wasn't just command. It was fear. Real fear that something would happen to her. She let Marcus lead her through corridors she'd never seen before, down into the sublevels of the tower. Danny was already there, flanked by 2 guards, looking pale and frightened. The safe room was exactly what it sounded like. Reinforced walls, air filtration, supplies for weeks, and enough weapons to fight off a small army. Marcus secured them inside, posted guards outside, and left without another word. Danny sat on one of the cots, knees pulled to his chest. This is because of me, isn't it? Because they took me? This is because Victor's dead. Because his brother wants revenge. Celine sat beside him. None of this is your fault. But you killed Victor for me, and now his brother's trying to kill everyone. His voice cracked. How many people have to die before this stops? I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. They sat in silence while explosions echoed through the city above them, distant thunder that marked the destruction of Ronan's empire. The casino on 5th was just the beginning. Over the next 6 hours, reports filtered down. 3 of Ronan's warehouses hit simultaneously, 2 of his lieutenants assassinated in public, a nightclub burned to the ground with people still inside. Alexei Kozlov was making a statement written in fire and blood. Around midnight, the door opened and Dmitri entered, his face streaked with soot and exhaustion. The boss wants to see you. Both of us? Celine asked. Just you. She left Danny with the guards and followed Dmitri through corridors that smelled like smoke. They emerged in Ronan's office to find it transformed into a war room. Maps on the walls, weapons on the desk, men in tactical gear coming and going with reports. Ronan stood at the windows, looking down at his burning city. When he turned, Celine saw the exhaustion etched into his face, the blood on his knuckles, the weight of command threatening to crush him. We're losing, he said without preamble. How bad? Alexei's hitting us everywhere at once. He's got more resources than Victor did, more connections, more willingness to kill civilians to make his point. Ronan moved to the desk, gestured at a map of the city marked with red dots. These are the locations he's hit in the last 12 hours. We've lost 30% of our operational capacity. If this continues, we'll be finished within a week. So what's the plan? The plan is you and Danny leave the city. Tonight. New identities, new lives. Enough money to never have to work again. He pulled out an envelope thick with documents. Everything's arranged. Marcus will escort you to a private airfield. By dawn, you'll be gone. Celine stared at the envelope like it was a snake. You're sending me away. I'm keeping you alive. While you stay here and die fighting a war you can't win? If that's what it takes. His voice was flat, final. Alexei wants me dead. Fine. But he doesn't get you too. He doesn't get to hurt you to hurt me. That's not your decision to make. Yes, it is. I brought you into this world. I put that gun in your hands. I made you into someone who could kill Viktor Kozlov. His hands clenched into fists. But I won't watch you die because of choices I made, so you're leaving. End of discussion. Celine crossed the room in 3 strides and slapped him. The sound cracked through the office like a gunshot. Ronan's head snapped to the side, and for a moment, nobody moved. The men at the edges of the room froze, uncertain how to respond to someone hitting their boss. Ronan's eyes, when they returned to her, were black with fury. You want to die that badly? I want you to stop making decisions for me like I'm property. Her voice shook with rage. You said we were partners. You said I had choices. But the second things get hard, you revert to the same controlling bullshit. Lock her up. Send her away. Keep her safe. Because I care about you. Then care about me enough to let me stand beside you. She was shouting now, months of frustration boiling over. I killed for you. I bled for you. I became a monster for you. And now you want to ship me off like some fragile thing that can't handle reality? You shouldn't have to handle this reality. This war, this violence. I'm already in it. I've been in it since the moment I walked into that room and met you. There's no going back, Ronan. There's no version of my life where I get to pretend none of this happened. She grabbed the envelope from the desk and threw it at him. So stop trying to save me from choices I've already made. Silence crashed down. Ronan stared at her, something complicated working behind his eyes. Then he turned to the men in the room. Everyone out. They filed out quickly. Even Dmitri, who looked like he wanted to object, left without a word. When they were alone, Ronan moved to the bar and poured 2 glasses of whiskey with hands that shook slightly. He drank his in one swallow, poured another. I watched my mother die when I was 8, he said quietly. Overdose. She was on the bathroom floor, and I was too small to help, too young to understand. I just sat there while she stopped breathing. He stared into his glass. I swore I'd never be helpless like that again, that I'd always be strong enough, smart enough, ruthless enough to protect what mattered. Ronan, and then you walked into my life, drunk and angry and refusing to beg, and for the first time in 25 years, I felt something other than control. He looked at her, and his eyes were raw. You scare me, Celine, because I care about you in ways I didn't think I was capable of anymore. And the thought of losing you to Alexei's vendetta, his voice broke. I can't be helpless again. I can't watch someone I care about die. Celine's anger drained away, replaced by something that felt dangerously like understanding. She crossed to him, took the glass from his hand, set it down. Then don't watch me die. Teach me how to survive. Give me the tools, the training, the knowledge. Make me dangerous enough that I can stand in your world and not just be a victim. You're not ready. Then make me ready. We have, 6 days before Alexei destroys everything? That's 6 days to train me. To turn me into someone who can fight beside you instead of someone you have to protect. Celine, please. Her hands found his face, forcing him to look at her. Let me choose this. Let me choose you. Even if it means dying beside you instead of living without you. For a long moment he just looked at her. Then his hands came up to cover hers and he leaned his forehead against hers. You're going to get yourself killed, he whispered. Probably. But I'd rather die fighting than live running. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Welcome to my world. He kissed her then, hard and desperate, and tasting like whiskey and fear. When he pulled back, his expression had shifted into something determined. All right, we do this your way. But you follow every order I give, no arguments. You train every waking hour. And if I tell you to run, you run. Deal? Deal. Then let's get to work. Ashat. The next 5 days were hell. Celine woke before dawn and trained until her muscles screamed. Marcus drilled her on weapons, not just pistols, but rifles, shotguns, submachine guns. How to clear jams under pressure. How to reload in the dark. How to shoot while moving, while bleeding, while terrified. Dmitri taught her about tactics and strategy. How to read a room, where to position yourself for maximum advantage, how to identify threats before they became problems. Another of Ronan's people, A woman named Katya, with scars on her hands and murder in her eyes, taught her hand-to-hand combat. Not the pretty martial arts from movies, but brutal, efficient violence. How to gouge eyes. How to break knees. How to kill someone with your bare hands if you had to. And through it all, Ronan watched with an expression that oscillated between pride and terror. Meanwhile, Alexei continued his assault. More warehouses burned. More of Ronan's people died. The city descended into chaos as two criminal empires went to war in the streets. On the third day, Dmitri brought news that made everyone go silent. Alexei had put a bounty on Celine, $5 million to whoever brought her to him alive. He knows you killed Victor, Dmitri explained. He wants you to suffer for it, publicly. Let him try, Celine said, and meant it. By the fifth day, she could field strip and reassemble a rifle in under 30 seconds, could hit a moving target at 50 yards, could drop a grown man twice her size if he got within arm's reach. She was bruised, exhausted, and more capable of violence than she'd ever imagined possible. But it still wasn't enough. Alexei's planning something, Ronan said that night, gathered with his inner circle in the war room. He's been too quiet for the last 24 hours. No attacks, no movements. That's not his style. Maybe he's regrouping, Marcus suggested. Or he's preparing for something big. Dmitri pointed at the map. All his previous hits have been tactical, destroying our infrastructure, killing our people, but nothing aimed at you directly, boss. Because he's waiting for the right moment. Ronan's jaw tightened. He wants to hit me where it'll hurt most. Somewhere public, symbolic, somewhere that'll show the entire city that I'm finished. Where? Celine asked. They all looked at each other, working through the possibilities. Then Katya spoke, her voice quiet and certain. The gala, the charity event at the Meridian tomorrow night. Ronan's face went white. Fuck! What gala? Celine demanded. Annual charity event for the city's elite. Politicians, business leaders, everyone who matters. It's been planned for months. Ronan started pacing. I'm supposed to give a speech, make a donation, show that I'm a legitimate businessman, not just a criminal. It's essential for maintaining my public image. So don't go, Marcus said. If I don't go, it's admitting defeat. It's showing the city that Alexei has me cowering. Ronan's hands clenched. Every rival organization will see it as weakness. Within a month, they'll all be coming for me. And if you do go? Celine asked, already knowing the answer. Then Alexei hits us there, in front of everyone. Turns the gala into a bloodbath. Ronan stopped pacing, his expression hardening. But if we know he's coming, we can be ready. We can turn his ambush into ours. That's suicide, Dmitri said flatly. The Meridian will be full of civilians. If shooting starts, hundreds could die. Then we make sure there's no shooting. We find Alexei before he makes his move. We end this quietly. How? Katya asked. We don't even know what he's planning. No, but we know he'll be there. He has to be to watch it happen. Ronan turned to Celine. Which means you're coming with me. What? Why? Because Alexei wants you. He's put a bounty on your head, made you a symbol of his vendetta. If you're at the gala, he won't be able to resist making a move. Ronan's eyes were cold, calculating. We use you as bait, draw him out, and when he shows himself, we take him. That's insane, Marcus said. That's the only play we have left. Ronan looked around the room. Everyone else has a better idea? Silence. Then we go with mine. Tomorrow night, Celine and I attend the gala. The rest of you position teams around the venue. Armed, ready, but hidden. When Alexei makes his move, we're ready to counter. And if he doesn't make a move, Dmitri asked, if he's smarter than we think, then we've bought ourselves another day, and we use it to find him before he finds us. Ronan's voice was hard. This ends tomorrow night, one way or another. The dress arrived at dawn, delivered by the same boutique that had transformed Celine before. This one was black, so black it seemed to absorb light, with a neckline that plunged dangerously and fabric that clung to every curve. It was armor disguised as fashion, designed to draw every eye in the room. Celine stared at it and felt her stomach twist. Last time she'd worn a dress like this, Victor had threatened her. This time, she was walking into an ambush voluntarily. Danny appeared in her doorway looking small and frightened. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Why? Why do you keep choosing to die for people? I'm not dying. I'm fighting. She turned to face him. And I'm fighting so you can have a life that doesn't involve hiding in safe rooms while the city burns. I don't want a life if you're not in it. The words hit like a punch. Celine crossed to her brother and pulled him into a hug. I'm coming back. I promise. You can't promise that. Watch me. She spent the afternoon preparing the dress, the makeup, the hair, but also the weapons. A small pistol strapped to her inner thigh, a knife in her clutch, body armor concealed under the dress's boning. She looked like a socialite. She was armed like a soldier. Ronan appeared at 7, dressed in a tuxedo that probably cost more than a car, looking every inch the legitimate businessman he pretended to be. But Celine could see the tension in his shoulders, the gun holstered under his jacket, the barely controlled violence waiting to explode. Ready? He asked. No, but let's go anyway. They rode to the Meridian in silence, Marcus driving, 2 more SUVs flanking them as escort. The hotel blazed with light, red carpet rolled out, photographers waiting. From the outside, it looked like every other charity gala. Inside would be different. Inside would be war. They stepped out of the SUV into camera flashes and shouted questions. Ronan's hand found the small of Celine's back, possessive, protective. They walked the red carpet like they owned it, and maybe they did. Maybe this whole city belonged to them, at least for tonight. The ballroom was exactly as opulent as Celine remembered from the last gala. Crystal chandeliers, live orchestra, beautiful people in expensive clothes. But now she saw it differently. Saw the exits, the sight lines, the places where assassins could hide. Saw potential threats in every shadow. Breathe, Ronan murmured. We're just here to be seen, to show the city I'm not afraid. And to draw out Alexei. That too. They circulated through the crowd. Ronan made small talk with politicians and business leaders, playing his role perfectly. Celine stood beside him, smiling when appropriate, scanning faces, looking for the threat she knew was coming. Victoria Marchenko appeared, still elegant in silver, her smile sharp as ever. Ronan, Celine, how brave of you to attend tonight. Victoria, Ronan's voice was flat. Still feeding off scraps, I see. Scraps? Darling, I'm thriving, especially now that you're so, distracted. Her eyes slid to Celine. Tell me, dear, is it worth it? Being his target? His weakness? I'm not his weakness, Celine said quietly. I'm his consequence. Victoria's smile faltered. Before she could respond, Dmitri appeared at Ronan's elbow, his expression grim. We have a problem. They moved to a quieter corner. Dmitri spoke low and fast. 3 of our spotters around the perimeter just went dark. No radio contact, no visual confirmation. Alexei's people? Has to be. He's clearing his approach vectors. Dmitri's hand moved to his concealed weapon. Boss, we need to evacuate you. Now. No, that's exactly what he wants. Me running, looking weak. Ronan's jaw set. We stay. We finish this. Ronan, Celine started. Trust me. His eyes found hers. We knew this was coming. We're ready. But they weren't ready for what happened next. The lights cut out. Complete darkness swallowed the ballroom. Screams erupted. People panicked, shoving, trying to reach the exits. Emergency lighting kicked in after 5 seconds. Dim red glow that turned everything hellish. And in that red light, Celine saw him. Alexei Kozlov stood on the orchestra stage, flanked by a dozen armed men in tactical gear. He looked like Victor, but worse, older, harder, with eyes that promised suffering. A microphone appeared in his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice boomed through the sound system. I apologize for the interruption, but we have business to conduct tonight, specifically with Ronan Drakov. Ronan stepped forward, shielding Celine with his body. Alexei, this is between us. Let these people go. Between us? No, Drakov. You made this public when you killed my brother. When you allowed this, he gestured at Celine, this nothing, this waitress, to put a bullet in him. His smile was vicious. So we settle this publicly, you and me, right now. Name your terms. Simple. You fight me, no weapons, no help. Just two men settling a blood debt. Alexei gestured to his men. You win. My people stand down. The war ends. You lose. He laughed. Well, you won't be alive to care. And if I refuse? Then my men open fire on everyone in this room, starting with your woman. 3 of Alexei's soldiers aimed rifles directly at Celine. The threat was clear. Ronan's hands clenched. Celine could see him calculating, working through options, looking for the play that didn't end in massacre. Don't do it, she whispered. It's a trap. It's the only way to keep you alive. He turned to face her, and his expression was raw. Whatever happens, you run. You get Danny and you run. Marcus will take you somewhere safe. Ronan, promise me. I can't. Promise me, Celine. She looked into his eyes and saw the boy who'd watched his mother die, helpless and small. Saw the man who'd built an empire from violence and fear. Saw the person who'd learned to care about her despite spending decades learning how not to care about anything. I promise, she lied. He kissed her, quick and fierce, and then stepped away. All right, Alexei, your terms. Let's finish this. The crowd parted as Ronan moved toward the stage. Alexei's men formed a circle, clearing space. Someone killed the orchestra's instruments, leaving only terrible silence. Celine watched Ronan shed his jacket, loosen his tie. Watched Alexei do the same, rolling his shoulders, preparing for violence. They were roughly the same size, same build. This would be brutal. Dmitri, she whispered, when this starts, how many of Alexei's people can your teams take? Maybe half before they return fire. Then, it's a slaughter. His face was grim. Too many civilians. Too much crossfire. So we need to even the odds first. How? Celine's hand moved to her thigh, to the gun strapped there. Get ready to move on my signal. What signal? You'll know it when you see it. On stage, Ronan and Alexei began to circle each other. The first punch came fast, Alexei's fist driving toward Ronan's face. Ronan blocked, countered with a strike to the ribs. They crashed together, brutal and efficient, fighting like men who'd learned violence in streets and prisons. Alexei landed a punch that split Ronan's lip. Blood sprayed. Ronan responded with an elbow that cracked Alexei's nose. They grappled, fell, rolled across the stage. The crowd watched in horrified silence. Celine watched Alexei's men, counting positions, measuring distances. 12 guards, all armed, all focused on the fight. She had 1 gun, 7 bullets. It wasn't enough. Unless she didn't try to kill them all. Unless she created chaos instead. Celine's hand closed around the gun. She breathed deep, remembered everything Marcus had taught her. Aim for center mass, squeeze, don't jerk, stay calm. She pulled the gun free and fired 3 shots into the ceiling. The sound cracked through the ballroom like the world ending. Everyone's attention snapped to her. Alexei's men, the crowd, even Ronan and Alexei frozen mid-fight. Hey! Celine's voice carried across the space, steady despite her racing heart. Alexei, you want me? Here I am. Let's stop pretending this is about honor or settling blood debts. This is about me killing your brother. So come get me yourself, if you're man enough. Alexei's face twisted with rage. You dare! I dare! She started walking toward the stage, gun raised, aimed directly at him. Victor died begging. Did you know that? He cried like a child when I put those bullets in him, and you're just like him, all talk, no spine. Kill her! Alexei screamed at his men. But Celine had counted on that. The second his soldiers swung their weapons toward her, Ronan moved. He was on Alexei instantly, one arm wrapped around the man's throat, using him as a human shield. Anyone fires, your boss dies. Dmitri's voice cut through the chaos. Now! The room exploded with gunfire. Ronan's people, positioned throughout the crowd, disguised as guests, opened fire on Alexei's soldiers. Civilians screamed and dove for cover. Bodies dropped. Blood sprayed across marble floors. Celine ran toward the stage, firing as she moved. One of Alexei's men turned toward her and she put 2 bullets in his chest. Another raised his rifle and Marcus appeared from nowhere, tackling him. The ballroom became a war zone. Crystal chandeliers shattered, raining glass, the orchestra pit filled with terrified civilians. Bullets punched through walls and paintings worth more than lives. Celine reached the stage as Ronan and Alexei went down in a tangle. Alexei had gotten free somehow. had grabbed a knife from one of his fallen soldiers. He drove it toward Ronan's throat. Celine shot him in the shoulder. Alexei screamed, dropped the knife. Ronan surged up and drove his fist into Alexei's face. Once, twice, 3 times. Bone cracked. Blood exploded. Alexei collapsed, gasping. Around them, the fighting ended. Ronan's people had won, barely. Bodies littered the floor. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Ronan stood over Alexei, breathing hard, blood dripping from his split lip. He looked at Celine, and something passed between them. An understanding. This was it. The moment. The choice. Ronan could kill Alexei here, end the Kozlov family forever. But that would mean execution in front of witnesses, in front of cameras. It would mean exposure, investigation, the end of everything he'd built. Or he could walk away. Let the law handle it. Risk Alexei coming back. Do it, Alexei gasped from the floor. Finish it, Drakov. Be the monster everyone knows you are. Ronan looked at him for a long moment. Then he turned to Dmitri. Call the police. Tell them we were attacked, that we defended ourselves. He looked around at the devastated ballroom, the terrified witnesses. Let them sort this out. Boss, I'm done. Ronan's voice was heavy. This war, this violence, I'm done. Alexei wants to be a martyr? Let him rot in prison instead. He took Celine's hand and pulled her toward the exit. Behind them, police burst through the doors, weapons drawn, shouting orders. They made it outside just as federal agents arrived, black SUVs screeching to a halt, men in suits and body armor flooding the scene. And at the center of it all, stepping out of an unmarked car, was a woman Celine had never seen before. 50s, gray hair pulled back severe, wearing a badge that read FBI. She looked at Ronan with recognition, with triumph. Ronan Drakov, she called out, don't move. You're under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 40 other charges we've been building against you for 5 years. Ronan's hand tightened on Celine's. Run, he whispered. What? Run. Get Danny. Get out of the city. There's a go bag in my office, cash and documents. Marcus knows where. I'm not leaving you. You have to. He released her hand, raised his arms as federal agents swarmed him. This was always how it ended for me. But you can still get out. You can still have a life. Ronan, go! He was being forced to his knees, hands cuffed behind his back. Please, if you ever cared about me, go. Celine stood frozen as they hauled him toward one of the SUVs. Around them, more arrests were happening. Dmitri, Marcus, half of Ronan's inner circle, the empire crumbling in real time. The FBI woman approached Celine, studied her with calculating eyes. Celine Vale, we know who you are. We know you killed Viktor Kozlov. We know you're part of Drakov's organization. I'm nobody, Celine said, voice flat. That's not what our intelligence says. You want to avoid spending the rest of your life in prison? You'll come with us. You'll testify against Drakov. You'll tell us everything. Celine looked past the woman to where Ronan was being loaded into an SUV. He turned his head, met her eyes one last time, mouthed, "Go." And Celine ran. She ran through the chaos, through the flashing lights and shouting agents, ran like her life depended on it, because it did. Behind her, she heard someone yell, "Stop her!" But she didn't stop, didn't look back. She made it 3 blocks before a black SUV pulled up beside her. The door opened and Katya leaned out. "Get in!" Celine dove into the vehicle. It peeled away from the curb, tires screaming. In the driver's seat was someone she didn't recognize, another of Ronan's people, one who'd escaped the federal sweep. "Where?" Katya demanded. "Drakov Tower, my brother. We have to—" "Already done. He's safe. Marcus got him out before the feds arrived." Katya handed her a phone. Text from the boss. Recorded before he knew he'd be arrested. Celine's hand shook as she played the voice message. Ronan's voice, calm and controlled. "Celine, if you're hearing this, things went wrong. The feds moved faster than expected, or Alexei had a backup plan, or something I didn't anticipate. Doesn't matter now. What matters is you and Danny get somewhere safe. Marcus has instructions. Katya will make sure you reach the extraction point. There's money, documents, everything you need to disappear. Go to ground. Stay hidden. And maybe, his voice caught slightly, maybe someday, when this is over, when I've served whatever sentence they give me, maybe you'll still be out there. Maybe we'll find each other again. The message ended. Celine stared at the phone, chest tight, eyes burning. Behind them, the city descended into chaos. Federal raids, arrests, the dismantling of everything Ronan had built. Where are we going? She asked quietly. Safe house first, then private airfield. We'll have you and the boy out of the country by dawn. Katya glanced at her. Boss's orders. Keep you alive no matter what. Celine leaned her head against the window and watched Blackwater City blur past. Somewhere in that city, Ronan was in custody, facing charges that would put him away for life. Somewhere, Danny was waiting for her, probably terrified. And somewhere inside herself, Celine felt something break. She'd survived, but she'd lost everything that mattered. The woman in the blood-red dress was gone. The waitress drowning in debt was gone. Even the killer who'd put bullets in Viktor Kozlov was gone. All that remained was Celine Vale, running again, always running. And this time, she didn't know if she'd ever stop. The safe house was a cabin 40 miles outside Blackwater City, buried in woods thick enough to swallow sound. Celine arrived just before dawn, exhausted and hollow, to find Danny sitting at a wooden table with Marcus standing guard. Her brother looked up when she entered, and the relief that flooded his face almost broke her. Lena. He was across the room in seconds, arms wrapped around her. When they said Ronan got arrested, I thought, I'm okay. She held him tight, breathing in the familiar smell of him, hospital soap and the cologne he'd started wearing to feel older. We're okay. For how long? Marcus asked from the doorway. His face was grim, exhausted. The feds have Ronan, Dmitri, half our command structure. They're tearing apart every operation, freezing assets, making arrests. By tomorrow, the Empire will be gone. What about us? Celine asked. Boss's contingency plan. New identities, offshore accounts he kept separate from the main operation. You'll have enough money to live comfortably for years. Marcus pulled out an envelope thick with documents. Birth certificates, passports, driver's licenses. You're Sarah and Michael Porter now, siblings from Ohio. There's a flight to Montreal in 6 hours, then on to somewhere the extradition treaties won't reach. Celine took the envelope with numb fingers. Sarah Porter. A woman who'd never met Ronan Drakov, never killed Viktor Kozlov, never stood in a ballroom while empires burned. What about you? Danny asked Marcus. Me? I'm staying. Boss will need lawyers, character witnesses, someone on the outside working to reduce his sentence. Marcus's jaw tightened. He saved my life 10 years ago when no one else would. I'm not abandoning him now. How long will he get? Celine's voice came out barely above a whisper. 20 years minimum. Maybe life, depending on what they can prove. Marcus met her eyes. He knew this was possible. He's been preparing for it since the moment Victor died. Maybe longer. He sacrificed everything. Celine sank into a chair. His empire, his freedom. For what? To end a war I started? No, to keep you alive. Marcus moved to the window, watching the tree line. Boss has done a lot of terrible things. Hurt a lot of people. But what he did for you, that was the first real thing I've seen from him in a decade. You made him human again, even if it cost him everything. The words sat heavy in the small cabin. Outside, dawn was breaking, pink and gold light filtering through the trees, beautiful and indifferent. Danny's hand found Celine's. We have to go, don't we? Leave him behind. Yeah, we do. That's not fair. No, it's not. Celine looked at her brother, 14 years old and already understanding that the world was built on unfair choices. But it's survival, and that's all we have left. They spent the next few hours preparing. Katya arrived with clothes, supplies, everything they'd need for the journey. She moved efficiently, professionally, but when she handed Celine a small box, her expression softened. From the boss, he wanted you to have it. Inside was a necklace, simple, elegant, with a pendant shaped like a storm cloud, and a note in Ronan's sharp handwriting, for the little storm who walked into my life and changed everything. Stay alive, stay free, and maybe someday find your way back to me. R. Celine's throat closed. She put the necklace on with shaking hands and felt the weight of it settle against her sternum, right over her heart. At 10 a.m., Marcus's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, and his face went pale. "What?" Celine demanded. "Alexei Kozlov made bail. Federal judge signed off an hour ago." The cabin went silent. "How?" Katya's voice was sharp. "He was arrested at a mass shooting. There's no way." His lawyers argued self-defense, said Ronan started the fight, that Alexei's people were protecting him. With all the chaos, with witnesses giving contradictory statements, Marcus cursed. "Judge bought it. He's out. And he knows Ronan's in custody. Which means he's coming for me." Celine stood, mind racing. Without Ronan's protection, without the organization, "You're exposed," Marcus finished, "and Alexei won't stop until you're dead. Then we leave now. Forget the flight plan. Just get us to the airport." Too late. Katya was at the window, her body gone rigid. "We have vehicles approaching. 3 SUVs, coming fast." "How many men?" "At least 12. Maybe more." Katya pulled her weapon. "We can't fight them all. Not here. Not with the kid." Danny's face had gone white. Celine looked at him, saw the fear, saw him trying to be brave, saw her baby brother about to die because she'd made choices that led them here. "No, not again. Not him." "Marcus." Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. "Take Danny, back door through the woods. There's a car stashed 2 miles north. Katya told me about it last night. Get him to that airport. Get him on a plane." "What about you? I'll buy you time." She checked the gun at her waist. The Sig Ronan had given her, still loaded. "Alexei wants me, so he can have me. Just long enough for you to get Danny out." "Lena, no," Danny started. "Yes." She grabbed his shoulders, looked into eyes that were so much like their mother's. "You're going to live, Danny. You're going to grow up. You're going to have the life I couldn't give you before Ronan, and you're going to remember that everything I did, every choice, every sacrifice, was because I love you. I can't leave you. You can. You will." She kissed his forehead. "Now go." Marcus grabbed Danny's arm, started pulling him toward the back of the cabin. Danny fought, crying, screaming her name. But Marcus was stronger, and within seconds they were gone, disappeared into the trees. Celine turned to Katya. "How long can we hold them?" "Not long. Maybe 5 minutes if we're smart." Katya's expression was grim. "You know this is suicide." "Yeah, I know." Celine moved to the front window, watched the SUVs getting closer. "But it's my suicide. My choice. For the first time in months, I get to choose how this ends. Boss wouldn't want this. Boss isn't here." She checked her gun again, counting rounds. 7 bullets, 12 men, minimum. The math didn't work. "And maybe this is better. Maybe this is the ending I deserve." The SUVs stopped 50 yards from the cabin. Doors opened. Men emerged, armed, professional, moving with the coordination of military training. Alexei stepped out last, his shoulder bandaged where Celine had shot him, his face twisted with rage and satisfaction. He raised a megaphone. "Celine Vale, I know you're in there. Come out now and I'll make it quick. Make me come in, and you'll beg for death before I'm done." Celine opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. Alexei's eyes widened. He'd expected resistance, a standoff. He hadn't expected her to walk out alone. "Where's your brother?" he demanded. "Where's Drakov's people?" "Gone. It's just me." She raised her hands, showing she was unarmed. The gun was tucked in the back of her jeans, hidden. "You wanted me, Alexei? Here I am." "You think I'm stupid? This is a trap." "No trap. No backup. Just a woman who's tired of running." She took a step forward. "You want revenge for Victor? Take it. But you leave everyone else alone. My brother, Marcus, Katya, they're civilians now. They had nothing to do with Victor's death." "You killed my brother." "Yes, I did. Because he was going to kill me." Another step. "So let's finish this, you and me, the way it should have been from the beginning." Alexei studied her, looking for deception, finding only exhaustion and resolve. Then he smiled, cold and cruel. "Brave or stupid? With you, I can never tell." He gestured to his men. "Take her." They moved forward, weapons raised. Celine stayed still, hands up, letting them get close. 20 feet, 15, 10. When they were 5 feet away, she moved. Her hand flashed to the small of her back, pulled the SIG, and fired 3 shots in rapid succession. 2 men dropped. Headshots. Impossible shots. Luck and desperation combined. The 3rd shot went wild. Then they were on her. A rifle butt slammed into her stomach, driving the air from her lungs. Another blow caught her temple, stars exploding across her vision. She hit the ground hard, tasted blood. But she'd bought seconds, maybe a minute. Enough for Danny to get farther away. Enough. They hauled her to her feet, zip-tied her hands behind her back. One of them punched her in the face, and she felt her lips split, blood pouring down her chin. Alexei approached slowly, savoring the moment. "You killed 2 of my men. Impressive, for all the good it'll do you." "Go to hell." Celine spat blood at his feet. He hit her, backhanded, hard enough to snap her head to the side. "You cost me everything, my brother, my reputation, my standing in this city, and for what? To be Drakov's whore? I was never his whore." Her voice was thick with blood. "I was his equal. You were nothing, a waitress playing dress-up." He grabbed her hair, yanked her head back. "But you want to know something funny? Drakov's federal charges? Those weren't random. I've been feeding information to the FBI for months, building a case, making sure that even if I couldn't kill him, I could destroy him." Celine's blood went cold. "What? You thought last night was about revenge? It was about distraction. While Drakov was focused on me, on the gala, on protecting you, the feds were moving into position, raiding his operation, seizing evidence, building an airtight case." Alexei's smile was vicious. "He sacrificed everything to keep you alive, and I made sure that sacrifice destroyed him completely." "You're lying." "Am I? Why do you think the FBI showed up so fast last night? Why do you think they knew exactly where to find him?" He released her hair, let her stumble. "I gave them Ronan Drakov on a silver platter, and watching him get arrested, knowing he'd spend the rest of his life in prison thinking about you." He laughed. "That's better than killing him." Rage flooded through Celine, hot and consuming. She lunged at Alexei despite the zip ties, despite the men holding her. Got her teeth into his arm before they pulled her off. Alexei screamed, blood streaming from the bite wound. "Bitch!" He hit her again and again and again. Celine's world became pain, blows raining down, ribs cracking, blood in her mouth and eyes. She was dying. This was dying, and the only thought in her head was, "Danny got away. That's enough." Then gunfire erupted, not from Alexei's men, from the tree line. Katya emerged from cover, firing with surgical precision. 3 of Alexei's soldiers went down before they could respond. Return fire shredded the trees, but Katya was already moving, using the forest for cover. In the chaos, Celine rolled, got her zip-tied hands under her feet, bringing them to the front. Someone had dropped a knife. She grabbed it awkwardly, sawed through the plastic. More gunfire, more of Alexei's men falling, and then Marcus appeared, flanked by 2 others Celine recognized, members of Ronan's inner circle who'd escaped the federal sweep. The battle was brief and brutal. Alexei's people were professionals, but they'd been caught in a crossfire, surprised by resistance they hadn't expected. Within minutes, half were dead or wounded. Alexei himself was crawling toward an SUV, bleeding from a wound in his leg. Celine stood, picked up a fallen rifle, and walked toward him. He saw her coming and tried to reach for a gun. She kicked it away. "Funny thing about revenge," she said quietly, her voice hoarse with pain and blood. "It never ends where you think it will." "Kill me then." Alexei's eyes were full of hate. "Prove you're the monster everyone says you are." Celine looked down at him. This man who'd destroyed so much, hurt so many, orchestrated Ronan's downfall. Every instinct screamed to pull the trigger, to end him the way she'd ended Victor. But something stopped her. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the realization that more death wouldn't bring Ronan back, wouldn't undo the last 2 months, wouldn't make Danny safe. Or maybe it was just that she was tired of being the person who killed. She lowered the rifle. "No. You don't get to die a martyr. You don't get to be remembered as the man who brought down Ronan Drakov." She gestured to Marcus, who pulled out zip ties. "You're going to live. You're going to face trial, and you're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell, forgotten. That's your punishment." Marcus secured Alexei while Katya called someone. Police, probably. or federal agents. It didn't matter anymore. The war was over. Both sides had lost. Celine walked back to the cabin and collapsed on the steps, her body screaming with pain. Broken ribs, definitely. Concussion, probably. Blood loss, certainly. But alive. Still alive. Danny emerged from the tree line, Marcus following. Her brother ran to her, dropped to his knees beside her. "I told you to go," Celine said weakly, "and I told Marcus to shut up." Danny's hands hovered over her, afraid to touch, afraid of hurting her more. "You're an idiot." "Yeah, but I'm your idiot." "Don't joke. You almost died. Again." "But I didn't. Again." She reached up, touched his face. "We're okay, Danny. Finally. Actually, okay." Sirens wailed in the distance. Katya appeared with a first aid kit, started cleaning Celine's wounds with gentle efficiency. Marcus coordinated with whoever was on the phone, his voice tired but relieved. And Celine sat there on the steps of a cabin in the middle of nowhere, bleeding and broken, and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. Okay. 3 months later, Celine stood outside the federal prison in upstate New York, wearing clothes she'd bought with her own money, carrying an ID that had her real name on it. The FBI had offered her witness protection, new identity, relocation, a chance to disappear completely. She'd refused. Testified against Alexei Kozlov instead, laying out everything: the kidnapping, the attempted murder, the conspiracy. Her testimony, combined with evidence from Ronan's people, had been enough to put Alexei away for 40 years. She'd also testified at Ronan's trial. Not against him. She'd refused to do that despite pressure from prosecutors. But as a character witness, explaining the man beneath the monster, the person who'd saved her and Danny when no one else would. It hadn't changed his sentence. Ronan Dreykov was going to prison for 25 years. But it had changed something in the courtroom, made people see him as human, not just a symbol of everything wrong with Blackwater City. The visiting room was institutional and depressing. Plastic chairs, scarred tables, guards watching from the corners. Celine sat and waited, her heart hammering with nerves she didn't understand. Then Ronan walked in. He looked different in prison orange. Older, maybe. Or just tired. His face was thinner, his eyes harder. But when he saw her, something shifted, softened in a way that made her chest tight. He sat across from her, hands clasped on the table between them. "You came," he said finally. "Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you'd be smart enough to stay away, build a new life far from me and everything I represent." "I tried." Celine's hands fidgeted in her lap. "Took Danny to Canada, got him enrolled in a good school, got myself a job, waitressing again, because apparently that's all I know how to do." She smiled without humor. "But I couldn't stop thinking about you, about everything we went through, about the fact that you're in here because you protected me. I'm in here because I spent 20 years building a criminal empire. Don't romanticize it. I'm not. I know exactly who you are, Ronan, what you've done, the people you've hurt." She leaned forward. "But I also know who you were with me, and that person," her voice caught. "That person deserves to be remembered too." Ronan's jaw tightened. "You should hate me. I destroyed your life. You saved my life, Danny's life. Yeah, it was messy and violent and fucked up in every possible way, but we're alive because of you, and I'm in prison because of you." He said it without accusation, just stating fact. "If I'd never met you, if you'd never walked into that room, then you'd still be the cold, controlled monster who felt nothing, and maybe you'd be free. But you wouldn't be alive, not really." Celine reached across the table, stopped just short of touching his hands. "You told me once that I was the first real thing in your life in 20 years. Well, you were the first person who ever made me feel like I could be more than I was, like I could survive anything, even me. Especially you." They sat in silence, separated by inches and regulations that prohibited contact. Around them, other inmates talked with their families, their lawyers, their past lives. "Danny's doing well," Celine said eventually. "Straight A's, made the basketball team. He's seeing a therapist to deal with everything, but he's healing." "Good. That's good." Ronan's expression softened. "And you?" "Me? I'm a mess. I have nightmares about the gala, about Victor, about watching you get arrested. I can't go into crowded rooms without planning exit strategies, and I definitely can't look at expensive dresses without wanting to throw up. But you're alive. Yeah, I'm alive. She finally closed the distance, let her fingers brush against his. A guard started forward, but Ronan's look stopped him. And I'm going to keep being alive. Going to raise Danny, build a real life, become someone worth being. You're already worth being. Maybe, but I want to be worth more. Want to be someone you can be proud of when you get out of here. When I get out, Ronan's laugh was hollow. That's 25 years from now, Celine. You'll be in your 50s. You can't wait that long. I'm not saying I'll wait. I'm saying I'll be here. She squeezed his hands. Not every visit, not even every month, but I'll come back. I'll write. I'll make sure you know that what we had, what we survived together, that mattered. Celine, let me finish. Her voice was firm. You gave me tools to survive in your world. Now I'm using those tools to survive in mine. I'm going to school, getting my degree, planning to work with kids like Danny, kids drowning in debt and bad choices. I'm going to take everything I learned from you and use it to help people instead of hurt them. Ronan's voice was rough. That's good. That's right. And maybe someday, when you've served your time, when you've paid your debt, maybe we'll see if there's still something between us. Maybe we'll be different people by then. Maybe we'll realize we only worked in the chaos, not in the calm. Or maybe we'll realize we're meant to burn together, Ronan said quietly. Maybe? Celine stood, visitor time ending. Either way, you're not forgotten. You're not just the monster in the news stories. To me, you'll always be the man who saw someone drowning and pulled them out, even if it meant drowning yourself. She walked toward the exit, but his voice stopped her. Celine. She turned. Thank you, he said, for giving me something real, even if it destroyed everything. It didn't destroy everything. She touched the necklace at her throat, the storm cloud pendant she wore every day. It created something too. Created us. And that's worth the wreckage. She left before the tears could fall, walked out into winter sunlight, and breathed free air. What? 2 years later, Celine graduated with a degree in social work. Danny was 16, thriving, talking about colleges. They lived in a small apartment in Montreal, far from Blackwater City, but close enough that the past wasn't forgotten, just distant. She wrote to Ronan monthly. Sometimes he wrote back, long letters about his days, his regrets, his hope that she was building something beautiful from the ruins of what they'd been. She visited twice a year. Each time, he looked a little more at peace with where he was, a little less like the crime lord, and more like just a man serving time. 5 years later, Celine opened her own nonprofit, a counseling center for families drowning in medical debt, helping them navigate the system that had nearly killed her and Danny. She named it Storm Haven, after the pendant she still wore. Danny went to college, got a degree in medicine, told her he wanted to be a cardiac surgeon, to save kids like himself. She visited Ronan and told him, watched pride flood his face. 10 years later, the world had mostly forgotten about Ronan Drakov. The empire had been dismantled, his associates scattered or imprisoned. Blackwater City had moved on, found new criminals to fear, new scandals to obsess over. But Celine remembered. She remembered the man in the obsidian suit who'd gripped her chin and whispered that she should be terrified. She remembered learning to shoot, to fight, to survive in a world that wanted her dead. She remembered standing beside him while empires burned. 15 years later, she got a letter from the parole board. Ronan had been approved for early release, model prisoner, showed remorse, posed no threat to society. He'd be free in 6 months. Celine sat with the letter for a long time, her apartment quiet around her. Danny was living in New York now, engaged to a woman he'd met in medical school, building the life Celine had sacrificed everything to give him. And Ronan would be free. The question was, what did that mean for her? She'd built a life without him, a good life, helped hundreds of families, saved countless people from the drowning she'd experienced. She was respected in her field, stable, healthy. Did she want to risk that for a man who'd once represented everything dangerous in her world? The answer came in the middle of the night, when she woke from dreams of blood-red dresses and cold eyes that had learned to feel. Yes, she wanted to risk it, because Ronan Drakov had shown her that survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about becoming someone worth surviving as. What? The day of his release, Celine stood outside the prison gates in the early morning cold. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back, no makeup, just herself. The person she'd become in the years since their world burned down. The gates opened. Ronan walked out carrying nothing but a small bag of belongings. He was 47 now, gray threading through his dark hair, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But he moved with the same controlled grace, the same predatory awareness. Their eyes met across the distance. He stopped, as if expecting her to disappear, as if this was a dream he'd had 1,000 times in his cell. Celine walked forward, closing the space between them. "Hello, stranger," she said. "Celine." Her name on his lips sounded like prayer and curse combined. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you'd be smart enough to stay away." "I tried being smart. Turns out I'm better at being stupid." She smiled, and it was real. "Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't immediately fall back into your old ways." "I'm not that person anymore." "I know, neither am I." She gestured to her car parked nearby. "Come on, we have a lot to catch up on." They drove in silence for a while, the prison disappearing in the rearview mirror. Ronan stared out the window like he'd forgotten what freedom looked like. "Where are we going?" he asked finally. "Somewhere quiet, where we can talk." She glanced at him. "I have a cabin, not the one where everything went wrong, a new one, by a lake. It's peaceful." "Peaceful?" He tested the word. "I'm not sure I know how to do peaceful anymore." "Then we'll learn together." The cabin was 2 hours outside the city, nestled in woods that were green with summer. Celine had bought it 3 years ago, a place to retreat when the work got too heavy, when the memories got too loud. She made coffee while Ronan explored the small space, taking in the books, the photos of Danny graduating medical school, the storm cloud pendant framed on the wall. "You kept it," he said, touching the glass. "Of course I kept it. It was a gift from someone who mattered." She handed him a mug. "I have a spare bedroom if you want to stay here for a while. Figure out what comes next." "What does come next?" "I don't know." She sat on the couch, and after a moment he joined her. "For 15 years I've been building a life without you, and it's been good. Really good. I've helped people, saved families, became someone I'm proud to be. But something's been missing. Some spark, some intensity, some reminder that I'm alive and not just going through motions." She turned to face him. "You gave me that once. Made me feel like I could survive anything, like I was remarkable." "You are remarkable." "Maybe. But I want to know if we can be remarkable together. Not in the chaos, not in the violence, but here, in the quiet, in the aftermath." She took his hand and it was warm, real, scarred by years in prison. "So stay, for a while. Figure out who you are now. And let me figure out if who I am now can love who you are now." Ronan looked at their joined hands, then at her face, seeing every year that had passed, every hardship overcome, every choice that had led them back to this moment. "I don't deserve this," he said quietly. "Don't deserve you waiting. Don't deserve a second chance. None of us deserve anything. We just get what we fight for." She squeezed his hand. "And I'm choosing to fight for this. For us. One more time. Even knowing how it ended before? Especially knowing how it ended before. Because we survived it. Both of us. Separately." She leaned closer. "Now let's see if we can survive together." He kissed her then, gentle and tentative. Nothing like the desperate possession of their past. This was careful, exploratory, two people discovering each other again after lifetimes apart. When they pulled back, Ronan's eyes were wet. "I spent 15 years in a cell thinking about you," he said, "wondering if you were happy, if you'd forgotten me, if the woman who walked into my life and changed everything had moved on to someone who deserved her. I did move on. I built a life. I became someone new." Celine's thumb brushed across his knuckles. "But I never forgot the man who taught me I could be strong, even if his methods were fucked up and his world was violent. That man is gone. Good. I don't want him back. I want whoever you are now, scars and all." They sat on the couch as the sun set over the lake, turning everything gold and red. Outside, the world continued. People lived and died. Empires rose and fell. Storms came and went. But inside the cabin, two people who'd been broken and remade sat together in silence that felt like healing. Calms. 6 months later, Danny visited with his fiancée. He stood on the cabin porch, looking at Ronan with complicated eyes. "So you're the man who destroyed my sister's life," he said. "I am." Ronan didn't flinch. "I won't apologize for it, but I will spend the rest of my life making sure it wasn't for nothing." "By doing what?" "By helping her build something better than what we lost. By supporting her work. By being the person she needed me to become." Ronan met Danny's eyes steadily. "Your sister saved me in ways that have nothing to do with bullets and empires. The least I can do is try to deserve that." Danny studied him for a long moment, then, "She loves you. I don't understand it, but she does. So I'm going to give you one warning. You hurt her again, and I don't care if you spent 15 years in prison or if you're reformed or whatever. I'll find a way to make you pay." "Fair enough." "Good." Danny offered his hand. "Welcome to the family, I guess." They shook, and Celine watched from the window, her heart full in ways she'd thought impossible. That night, she and Ronan sat by the lake, watching stars reflected in water. "You know what's funny?" she said. "I walked into your world as prey, became a killer to survive. And now I'm—" She gestured at the cabin, the life, the peace. "This. Remarkable," Ronan said quietly. "Is it? Sometimes I think I'm just hiding, that the real me is the woman in the blood-red dress standing in a war zone. Maybe you're both. The survivor and the healer, the killer and the savior." He pulled her closer. "Maybe that's what makes you remarkable. You contain multitudes." Pretty words from a man who used to threaten people for a living. "I had a lot of time to read in prison. Poetry, philosophy, all that shit I used to think was pointless." He kissed the top of her head. "Turns out understanding beauty makes the darkness more bearable." They sat in comfortable silence, and Celine thought about the journey that had brought them here. The desperation, the violence, the impossible choices. The way she'd walked into Club Nocturne drowning and emerged someone capable of killing to protect what mattered. She thought about Victor's blood on her hands, Alexei's rage, the FBI agents leading Ronan away in handcuffs. She thought about Danny's tears, Marcus's loyalty, the empire crumbling while she ran. And she thought about this moment. Peace earned through fire, love built from wreckage. "Do you have regrets?" she asked Ronan. "Thousands, but not about you." His arm tightened around her. "Meeting you cost me everything, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat." "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." "Welcome to my world." She laughed, and it was real and free and full of everything they'd survived to reach this moment. Somewhere in Blackwater City, life continued. Stormhaven helped another family drowning in debt. Danny saved another kid's life in an operating room. The world turned, indifferent to two people who'd once stood at its dark heart and chosen each other over survival. But here, by this lake, in this cabin built from the ashes of who they'd been, here Celine Vale and Ronan Drakov found something neither had expected. Not redemption, not forgiveness, not even healing, not completely, but a future. Built one choice at a time, one day at a time, together. The little storm and the man who'd learned to love her. Damaged, dangerous, but finally, impossibly, at peace. And in the end, that was enough. Epilogue. 20 years after the night Celine walked into Club Nocturne, she stood on a stage at a charity gala. This one held at Stormhaven's new facility, funded by anonymous donors and years of hard work. She was 46 now, her hair touched with gray, her eyes carrying the weight of everything she'd seen and survived. She wore a simple black dress, elegant without being ostentatious, and around her throat was a storm cloud pendant she'd never taken off. 20 years ago, she told the assembled donors and families, I was drowning. Medical debt, impossible choices, no way out. I made decisions I'm not proud of, took help from people I shouldn't have trusted, became someone I didn't recognize. In the audience, Ronan sat beside Danny and his wife, their 2 children on either side. He was 62, completely gray now, but his eyes were still sharp, still watchful. He'd spent the last 20 years helping Celine build Stormhaven, working quietly behind the scenes, using skills learned in a different life to help people instead of hurt them. But those choices led me here, Celine continued, to this organization that's helped over 10,000 families, to a life I never imagined possible, and to understanding that sometimes the darkest moments create the brightest transformations. She caught Ronan's eye across the room. He smiled, small, private, meant only for her. After the gala, they drove home in comfortable silence. The cabin by the lake was bigger now, renovated and expanded, but still theirs, still the place they'd built together from nothing. "Good speech," Ronan said as they settled on the porch, watching the lake under moonlight. "I stole most of it from that philosophy book you gave me." "Ah, well, steal from the best." They sat in the silence they'd learned to cherish, not empty, not lonely, but full of shared history and hard-won peace. "Do you ever miss it?" Celine asked. "Your empire, your power being feared?" "Sometimes, usually around 3 a.m. when I can't sleep." He took her hand. "But then I look at what we built here, what you've accomplished, and I realize that power was a prison. This," he gestured at the lake, the cabin, their life, "this is freedom. Even with all the scars, especially with the scars, they remind me I survived. We survived." Celine leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, still alive, still here after everything. "You know what's funny?" she said. "Victor told me I should be terrified of you. You should have been." "I was. But I was also curious. About the man beneath the monster. About whether someone who'd survived that much darkness could still find light." She lifted her head, looked at him. "Turns out he could. Only because you showed me where to look." They kissed under the stars. Two people who'd walked through hell holding hands, who'd emerged scarred but intact, broken but healing. And somewhere in Blackwater City, another person was drowning. Another family was facing impossible choices. Another storm was gathering. But here, in this moment, in this place they'd built from the wreckage of who they'd been, here, Celine and Ronan had found the thing they'd both thought impossible. Not a happy ending, not a redemption arc, not even a clean resolution, but a life. Hard-won and real, and theirs. And in the end, that was everything. The storm had passed, the city still stood, and two people who should have destroyed each other had somehow, impossibly, saved each other instead. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.